13th, 2017. We have a long agenda tonight, and so we'll go ahead and start counting with a moment of silence. Thank you. I would like to introduce a veteran of the Iraq War, a member of the United States Army, and Kyle Shipp, and a neighbor of mine as well. Kyle is here at my behest and at the invitation of Bette Wilson Foley, who suggested that we honor our veterans by having them assist us with leading the Pledge of Allegiance. And members of Girl Scout Troop number 4321, 10 young women who are with us tonight to help lead the pledge with Kyle. And we welcome all of these young women and Kyle. It was a thought that we have had the celebrations and the pledge from a number of Boy Scouts in the community, and we wanted to honor our Girl Scouts and our veterans as well. So thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Scouts have also gifted us with thank you cards and celebrations of their being with us tonight. So thank you, Troop 4321. Thank you. You have the momentous agenda before you. Is there a motion to either approve the agenda or to make modifications to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with one minor change to the minutes that's here at our this evening.
All right, and that's the portion of the consent agenda, of which there are 6 items. And is there a second to that? Motion by Michael Fielder, seconded by Pamela Paulson. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Sorry.
I just had one thing, but it's not a big deal. But the commissioner's meeting schedule on Tuesdays, I have a conflict on Tuesday, so I can just let you guys know ahead of time if I can make those meetings or not. That is a conflict with me on Tuesday night.
The next part of our agenda, our regular agenda, if it remains unchanged, may I have a motion to approve the regular agenda?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next is citizen matters, the public expression period in which we allot 3 minutes per speaker. And the first person signed up tonight is Tom Linden. You'll come to the podium and give your name and address.
Thank you, Mayor. And Town Board, my name is Tom Glendenning. Address is Ralph Russell Chapel Road. My comments tonight address a stormwater capital improvement project. And the subject property is on 136 South Fayetteville Street. I believe you all received electronic copies of this. If you'd like hard copies, I'll be glad to provide them. It's the old poultry plant to the west of the fire station behind D.W. Smith's Exxon. And item 1 and I'm addressing the hard copies here as a general map of the town. I'm sure you all are familiar with it. Item 2 is basically describing the drainage totals, which are half of the Methodist Cemetery and the lot across the street Jack Gustus used to live in, and then lots to the south of that. And then a statement of the recommendations. Basically, to quickly summarize the statement, 2 inches of rain would yield on 1.2 acres, which is the measured area to the north of the subject property, would yield 54,000 gallons of water running down South Fayetteville Street. 3 inches would yield over 80,000 gallons, and 4 inches would yield over 100,000 gallons to drain onto basically the subject property, and that's pretty well measured and divided by the fall of the land. And this has been, they looked up the property record card, a reasonably long-standing problem. The property record card dates the plant to 1926, so it's not anything that you are responsible for. But I just recommend this, and the pictures, of course, go along with that. I recommend that this capital improvement project be considered in the long run at some point, hopefully to fit into a budget. And I did a takeoff on just the Chatham Park, the new properties that will come onto the tax books in 2017 or 18, and they amount to roughly $20 million in base value, and should yield, if I understand the tax rate, $75,000 to the tax base or to revenue to the town. And I am told that a reasonably good installation of the catch basin, approximately 75 feet to the existing catch basins, and there are 2 of them at the very bottom of that property in the southeast corner, would yield cost about $25,000. And I think that I've covered everything I needed to. Did I gloss over anything or become unclear at any point?
And I understand that the town engineer is working with you, meeting with you tomorrow on the property to take a look at the flow and the situation.
I greatly appreciate your attention to that.
Great. Thank you. Our next speaker is Steve Carr. Steve, if you approach.
Hello, I'm Steve Carr. I live at 433 West Salisbury Street, and I've heard a rumor that has concerned me, which is the old Ford lot by the Masonic Lodge, that there are plans for a large gas station with car wash and possibly fast food there, and I feel like that would be not a plus for the town, that type of light pollution, traffic, noise, exhaust, possible underground tanks, and I'd heard there's maybe some type of watershed things there and sinkholes. Could be a real problem, a lot for the adjacent properties. We're trying to do a lot of nice things downtown, and having another gas station doesn't seem like the right way to go. I feel like if there's some way we can foster retail, restaurant, some service. I've heard other communities try to put ordinances in place that give proportions to those type of uses through town. That would be a great step. Also, I wonder, I know that's C2 zoning, if there's a way you could create an ordinance for new construction, which we don't see a lot of, and we don't have a lot of room left, that new construction is treated as conditional use. So at least the town gets kind of a whack at it to see if this is something we really want. Repurposing old buildings is a great thing, and you're kind of limited on what you can do, but a large lot like that where you could put in a gas station there are probably other examples of things that might not support the rest of downtown. It'd be nice if the town had a way to deal with that that's kind of built into the zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Steve, Steve has repurposed the old hatchery building, Economy Furniture Store, and a lovely old house on Salisbury Street. So we appreciate the beautification that you've brought to the town.
Oh, thanks. Key to the city next time.
All right. Our next speaker is Blake Jones. Blake, would you approach?
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Bishop Blake Jones. I'm the Bishop of the Mormon Church that has recently been completed. My address is 377 Jordan Hills Loop. Our church address is 151 Old Rock Spring Cemetery Road. And I'm here just to invite you leaders out to an open house and a tour and the general public to the open house. We met with several of you about a year and a half ago for the groundbreaking, and we're happy to announce that the building's completed and our congregation is growing, and we filled the building, and now we're using it, and we're thankful for the opportunity that we have to be in the city and to serve along with you, the members of and the families of this great county and this great city. So I'm here with Brother David Creech, and he's got some invitations to pass out for you, and we have some invitations for each of you to stop by. The open house is Thursday and Friday. The tours are Thursday and Friday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and the open house is Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we'd love to have you come meet your Mormon neighbors. I know in certain religions we think differently of people, and we want you to just come and get to know us and understand that we are Christians and we're here to serve our fellow men. And we know that as we serve each other, we're serving our God. And I share that with you. And thank you for letting me have a moment at the mic.
Thank you. David, did you want to speak a moment?
Just for a quick second. So I serve as Director of Public Affairs for the Mormon Faith in Chatham County, Southwest Wake County, and I wanted to invite each of you to our Nativity Luncheon, which Mary, you've been kind enough to join us. That'll be December 7th at 12 o'clock in our Apex Chapel. Great, I don't know how better to describe it than an eclectic group of service-based individuals. Faith, ecclesiastical, business, media, academia. There's leaders from all different areas of Wake County. We'll have people from the governor's cabinet. We'll have some of the state representatives, and obviously the mayors and town council and commissioners from throughout the region. So we'd love to have you here at that meeting. Okay? And that's the one you got that looks like that. Thank you so much. All right. Part of my life. Perfect. Will do. Thank you so much. Can I tell them what you did?
One of the amazing things about that luncheon is that there are hundreds, thousands
Not quite. We've gotten the 700 to 900 range every year.
of nativity scenes from all over the world, and some of them are quite humble, some of them are quite fancy, and I was just awed by it. It was a really wonderful experience to go to that last year. And so I told David that I had a set that came from Katie.
Yes.
And so I've given him that to share with the...
We have overnight people that sleep there, so no one can take these. So we'll guard their lives.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is David Clark. David, if you come to the podium.
You bet. Good evening, folks. My name is Dave Clark. I live at 219 East Street, and I am the neighbor of the future gas station, car wash, convenience store, fast food entity that's probably going to move in on Masonic and Business 64. I wanted to come and say that in the last year, I've realized how important it is for citizens to get involved in their local politics. And for a long time, I've been here 7 years. I've sat on the corner of Small and 64 run my business, my bed and breakfast, my restaurant, live there. Saw that empty lot next door and thought, be nice if somebody did something with that. I'm the Chihuahua chasing a bus right now. You know, it's already happening. And that brought to mind that, like Steve Carr said, we have some zoning in town that could be reviewed, and I would love to see that happen, so that as Chatham Park moves in, as Pittsboro grows, we have some recognition of the historic district of downtown and what it could be and what it might be if we're careful. I would love to have some input on this gas station, the Eagles entity that's planning on moving in. That may be possible, it may not. However, we do have a future to look forward to in this town. We have a lot of places. If that comes in and there's another car wash and another gas station and convenience store and all that, some places are going to drop off. You know, the way it goes is the big guy moves in and the smaller, you know, Lowe's moved in, hardware store downtown closes. All these things shift and change. And if we can look at the zoning for some of these properties downtown, it would be really helpful in the future to say, you know, hey, let's rezone that. Commercial properties, there are a lot of them in the area that could be a storage unit. They could be a factory. They could be, you know, multiple use income, low income dwellings. They could be a lot of things if we zone them correctly. And I don't know the particulars about that, but I will get familiar with it, and I will be very friendly with you all in the coming months and years about how that happens. I really have woke up and gone, maybe I should have gotten involved a little earlier. And so I'm here to say thank you for what you do, and please don't lock the door when I come knocking, because I will be interested and I will be active and I will be working to help Pittsboro grow in the right ways. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Dave, look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda are commissioner updates and mayor updates. It's been a busy time since our last meeting on the 25th of October. At the Physical Therapy Office on the 28th, we all enjoyed the phenomenal weather for the street fair. On the 5th of November, I did one of those things that just makes your heart burn, which was I judged the chili cook-off at the Senior Citizen Center along with Chief Crutchfield. Chief, how are you feeling these days?
Good. Our cover.
On the 8th of November, attended the PBA, Pittsboro Business Association. Over the weekend, we had a wonderful event in Pittsboro, the Women's Show at the Agriculture building. And tonight, right before I came here, we cut another ribbon at the Toastmasters group. So there are reports from other members of the commission with respect to events that they've done or meetings they've attended.
Well, I'll mention that I'll be attending the EDC meeting tomorrow morning. The PBA and Main Street program are gearing up the holidays, and tree lighting ceremony is November 20th, 4 p.m. 6 p.m. And there will be the unveiling of the Main Street town slogan at that time. So I understand there's been a selection. Small Business Saturday is November 26th. There's free gift wrapping in downtown, well throughout the town. And of course, Miracle on Hillsborough Street is December 17th, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's all.
One correction, Commissioner. It's Sunday night, the 19th, tree lighting. This coming Sunday.
I looked there brochure right before I came here, so
They must have. Last year's was the 20th.
Got
This
it.
is Sunday night.
Maybe it's the old one. Okay.
They probably got typoed in.
All
I'm
right.
going to make a little announcement that the Chatham Arts Council, which I'm Vice President of the Arts Council,
is having a Bluegrass Experience concert. There's two residents of Pittsburgh, Snuffy Smith and Tommy Edwards, who has a business in downtown. The band has been together for an incredible 46 years. They're having a concert on November 19th at the Farrington Barn at 3 o'clock. Anybody wants to come? And if you eat at the Fish Company, a percentage of the proceeds that day also gets reversed. Just want to throw that out.
Anything for climate change or affordable housing or anything like that?
Actually, yeah. At the Chatham County Climate Advisory Committee meeting 12 days ago, the committee did begin deliberation and hearing a proposed climate action plan for the county, as well as new job description for a sustainability director for the county. I don't have any results action from that, but that's begun.
All right. Then let's move to new business. First item is a Clean Tech cluster presentation. And this was an event that was going to be held some number of weeks ago. But I appreciate you being here. Tell us who you are. And
Second monitor is on.
And we'll be delighted to hear from you.
Absolutely. My name is Emmett Owens, and I'm with the Research Triangle Clean Tech Cluster. And I also have with me representatives from Duke Energy and Itron, who are all working with the Chatham Park to help make sure they have the latest and greatest in technology. And so now that we have those monitors on, I'm going to kind of jump into a little bit about my presentation. And first, thank you all for your time here. I'm going to kind of dart through my presentation now that I see the length of your agenda this evening. But for those who are not familiar with RTCC, we're an industry-led, industry-funded regional economic development organization focused on clean tech. And what I'm going to do is going to give you an overview of some of the innovation that's occurring and what this means for the town of Pittsburgh and Chatham County. And a key part of RTCC is Chatham Park, who is our project partner. And what we're doing with Chatham Park is working to connect them with the latest and greatest in technology and making sure that they have a resource when they have a tough question about what can I do here in this particular detail of the development to be more sustainable and to be more thoughtful about technology and incorporation of technology in communities. And so one of the key things for us is we leverage collaboration, innovation, and we use collaboration and innovation to really drive economic growth. And so we really, again, focus on accelerating growth through working with everyone in the region. That includes what we call a triple helix model of development, where we bring together industry, government, and academic partners to really address some of those challenges and the technology. Some of the factors that are driving smart cities and clean tech. One of the key things that we see is the convergence of technology. We see hardware, software, and analytics all converging into a single platform. And that's, historically, they've all been siloed components. But now you have, if you look at some of the technology that will be discussed today, a smart meter, which is leveraging software and analytics. And it creates a lot of challenges for individuals. You also have this need to have this technology deployed because there's a greater density of population. So you have, for better or for worse, you see folks moving from rural communities into more urbanized areas. And so technology can be a great way to help mitigate some of the challenges such as traffic and issues such as public safety. Another thing that you see is that we have the cost of IoT sensors declining, and that really helps make the implementation and deployment of technology more affordable for municipalities and for everyone involved. And one of the other key things that we'd like to point out is, if you think back to the creation of the Research Triangle Park, we've had three waves of technology development. We've had the IT revolution with IBM and Cisco in the park through the 60s and 70s. You had the revolution of biotech coming in the 90s and 2000s. And what we really believe and what we're seeing, what the data shows, is that we're having a third wave of job growth that's focused on clean tech. And as you can see here from this map, there are over 350 clean tech companies, and not many places in the world can boast this. In fact, I would say we are quite an impressive group here. And something that I want to point out is if you look over towards Chatham County, you'll see a company called 3EFS. And 3EFS just won a 2007 Popular Mechanics Award for their breakthrough technology and focused on electricity, and they're right here in Pittsboro in Chatham County. And so it just doesn't extend in Raleigh-centric. This is truly a regional effort, and there's a lot of cool technology. And so how is North Carolina and the Research Triangle region? Well, one is the largest electric utility in the U.S. who's quite progressive given their size and the constraints that they have to operate within keeping low-cost lights on all the time. We have the second in the U.S. for solar capacity, and you can go on and on. But I think another note here is that of the research that we've done, there's been something in the clean tech sector done in each county over the past 5 years in the Research Triangle region. So that includes Chatham County. And then another key thing to highlight the economic growth and how this all is wonderful for our community is in the past, since 2009, there have been over 12,000 jobs created in the clean tech sector. There's been $1.6 billion in annual reoccurring investment, and this region is #1 in clean tech patents per million residents. Just really impressive and things that are going on. And then also, I wasn't originally scheduled to do this presentation. My colleague Susan, our executive director, was. But we recently had an opportunity to come up where she's been called away to Barcelona to give a presentation about the great work that's going on in this community. That includes, again, Chatham Park as one of the leading examples of smart city and development that there probably will be on the southeastern United States. And so our members include some of the largest companies you've never heard of. You've got companies like ABB developing transformers and things for the grid. You have companies like Census and Trilliant developing smart street and smart city solutions. And then you also have companies like SAS and Hoffman Building Technologies who are leveraging IT solutions to do smarter buildings. And then we also have companies like who are with us today, like Duke Energy and Itron, who are working together to create a grid for the 21st century. This is just a quick slide of our members, who else is involved with our organization. It includes all the Tier 1 research universities in the Triangle and a number of companies who are developing great solutions for our cities all over the world, really. And so what does this benefit mean for Pittsboro and Chatham Park? So this gives you access to thought leaders who are building the communities of tomorrow. And that can also, in terms of technology development, but also in terms of accelerating the pace and growth of that development. So if you think about one of the things that we've been able to do is accelerate the development of the relationship between Chatham Park and Duke Energy so that Chatham Park could leverage the latest and greatest in smart grid technology. You also see a relationship between Itron, and these are more of case studies I'm going to jump into now. What could this mean in the relationship between the Clean Tech Cluster and Chatham Park and the access to technology that Chatham Park has? It could mean you deploy a solution such as Duke Energy and Itron have developed at Vision Charlotte, where in the past 2 years they've been able to reduce 19%, seen a 19% reduction in build energy consumption with a focus on energy efficiency and water efficiency. And I have to say, it's really, the technology's there, but it's a matter of partnerships. And so with that, I'll also point out that you have the ability to leverage our technology to create autonomous vehicles that might be able to deploy citizens to medical appointments if they're disabled or they just don't feel like they need to drive it given their current state. It also allows greater insight into utility usage, which I believe my colleagues from Duke Energy and Itron will touch on here in a second. And it also allows you to have smart street lighting, which can be used to enhance public safety and improve connectivity to create the gigabit networks that are going to be needed to deploy technology and have economic development. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrian Elders and Bill from Chatham, from Duke Energy. I apologize. Twitter version, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Elder with Duke Energy, and my colleague Bill Watson is going to talk to you in just a moment about some of the smart offerings that we have, but I thought I would just give you a real high-level idea of what Duke is investing. Over the next 10 years, we have a really vigorous grid investment plan. We'll be investing $16.4 billion. Emmett mentioned the grid of the future, and that's what we are trying to build. There are kind of four main pillars of what we're trying to achieve there. One is to create a more resilient grid. We'll be doing targeted undergrounding on the feeders that statistically have the most outages on our system, as well as investing in a lot of our infrastructure on the system. We will be working to create more integration of renewables and doing some advanced metering technology so that our customers have more access to their real-time usage of energy. In addition to that, security, the block in the bottom left corner of that circle is security, both physical security and cyber security. And the last is really making it a smarter grid. So we have self-optimizing parts of our grid at the moment, but we'll be increasing those numbers so that we can decrease the duration and frequency of outages for our customers. And I'm going to let Bill talk to you a little bit about some of our other smart offerings.
Great.
Thanks for your time. I'm in charge of developing new offerings for our customers, and most of those offerings are energy efficiency related things. And we've been in the energy efficiency business for a long time. The cleanest electron is the one that you don't use, and that's one we definitely focus on. But things like energy management, energy efficiency lighting, I hope you've all gotten your free LEDs and taken advantage of those offerings from us. When you're improving your house, we want to work with you to make sure that you've got the most energy efficient equipment and installation that you could possibly have. New construction we focus on, and also low-income things you can do to help you control and manage your bill. As new technologies come along, we start to push things pretty hard. Home energy reports have been around for a while. We're starting to use data analytics to better define what your usage is. We're starting to be able to split that out so you can see how much of your usage is cooling, how much is your appliances, how much is lighting, those types of things. But one of the things we're excited about is around smart metering, Internet of Things, and getting more control and more information in our customers' hands so they can really take advantage of making bold actions towards energy efficiency. So this is some screenshots of some things we're working on to give you real-time usage. So when your kid is opening the refrigerator door and they're standing to the side, what type of ice cream they like, you can show them that is costing you money to have the refrigerator door open. We can do that live in real time now, and we're looking forward to rolling that out in the town, in Chatham Park, and the rest of the Carolinas. I'm excited about this. Other offerings that come along with the Itron metering solution, being able to avoid deposits for folks that's a hardship, so they can pay as you go, which is we're excited about. If there's something going on in your house that you're using a lot more energy than the weather says you should, we're going to send you a text alert and say, hey, something's going on. How can we help you? Giving better outage information, being able to get control of your bill and be able to pay it on the day of the month that most helps you, and being really detailed in what that energy does. So after me, Itron.
Good evening, everybody. As Emmett had mentioned, Itron happens to be a company that's a U.S.-based company out of Liberty Lake, Washington, but we do have a huge presence here in Raleigh. We're a company that you probably have not heard of. Of the three services that you are receiving in the area, Itron covers energy and water, so that's electric and gas. PSNC and Duke happen to be Itron customers, and at the current moment, the town of Pittsboro is not an Itron customer, but our technology does address all three services. And we're a global company of about 8,000 employees with over 8,000 customers and a revenue of about $2.1 billion. So Itron has been in this space since 1977, and we're not new to this market space. We have over 160 million endpoints or devices deployed throughout the U.S. And when it comes to the type of solution we're looking to present to Chatham Park is an AMI smart-based smart city solution, and there are 20 million modules that we've deployed to date. And when it comes to a solution, Itron's been at it for over 40 years, and the solutions can range from either something as simple as capturing an immediate read to something that makes the utility a smart utility, but it goes beyond to outcomes as to what does the community want to get out of the solution. Whether you want to incorporate smart street lighting, you want to incorporate traffic controls, parking meters, that one canopy, one solution would be able to provide that offering to the county and Chatham Park. And there are some other drivers. As Bill had mentioned, the Internet of Things is pushing a lot of the technology. You're able to purchase a Nest device. You're able to get a thermostat control for your hot water heater and control it remotely. All that is pushing the technologies to water and gas industries. And your customers are becoming more and more, sophisticated. So they're demanding more. Well, the solution that we're looking at providing here is something that will be able to meet those needs. So when it comes to consumer engagement, those calls that you're getting at the customer service level will be able to be reduced in time and in truck roll. So not only are you reducing overhead, but you're also becoming a more resourceful utility, more respectful of your environment, so less CO2, less carbon footprints. And Itron's been focused in making this a more sustainable and resourceful planet for everybody. And being a child of the 60s and 70s, I did not grow up embracing conservation per se, but I have learned that everything that we do has an impact on the current environment and in the future. So our objective is to make sure we leave the planet a better place for our kids and our grandkids. And the solutions we have here will do just that. So there are a couple of examples here as to what benefits folks have experienced. Lake County was able to reduce 25% in call volume based on the technology that they had. That's a $250,000 in savings. Another application that Bill touched on is giving your giving your constituents the ability to see the bills, control what their usage is, perhaps get alerts, perhaps make payments. All that information will be available via a smart device, whether it's an Apple PC or even your Droid phone. And finally, just closing it out on two examples. One was the city of North Miami Beach that had deployed a smart solution. This is a water-only type of community, 40,000 connections. They saved $38,000 annually on reduced leaks. So if there's concerns about water that you're pumping, that you're paying power for, that you're not getting revenue on, it's a finite commodity that matters. And so it's important. It was important to North Miami Beach to identify every problem they could, and they were able to save $38,000. And that's, I apologize, not annually, that's quarterly. And the other thing that they did just last month, another benefit of the system that they had deployed, being in North Miami Beach, there was a hurricane that came up called Hurricane Irma, I believe. And after 24 to 36 hours of sustained winds, down trees, power started coming back up and the network started to come up. And the engineer there was able to identify leaks in their system that they normally would not have been able to because of the floods that they had. So you had trees that had knocked down power lines, knocked down water lines, and you had water that was running into the city. And they were able to identify those, even though it had been sustained a foot or two of water in the area. They were able to find those leaks and close them. And the last one that I'd like to leave you on was Envision Charlotte. Some of this was touched on by Emmett, but when it comes to actually putting a dollar value on it, there's about $17 million saved in this project that we had in Charlotte. So there was water and energy that was saved in about 21 buildings throughout downtown Charlotte. So these are tangible results from being able to take the data that you have and take action on it. You cannot manage if you can't measure it. And we'll close it off, I think, with Emmett. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. We really know you have a packed agenda. But one of the key takeaway I would like to leave with you all is that as you have conversations about deploying technology and infrastructure in a city setting, think of the Clean Tech Cluster as a resource you guys can leverage as you make those decisions. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope you have a great afternoon, great evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is a draft resolution with respect to carbon fee and dividend. John Bonnet, are you prepared to lead us in this?
Certainly. So the carbon fee and dividend proposal is
basically an idea that has been embraced by conservatives and progressives alike, environmentalists especially, but pro-market folks of the pro-market philosophy, because it puts the mechanism in the market. That's how we control the pollution. Basically, we assess a fee at the federal level on sources of carbon pollution at the pump or at the coal mine, and the great majority, if not 100% of the fee, is returned back to the people, us individual consumers. And because of the nature of our consumption of fossil energy, it works out to the benefit of the greater numbers of the population, because folks that have an awful lot of money or very large corporations tend to burn a lot more fossil energy than we individuals do. So we end up with more money in our pockets at the end of the year. That's the general idea. This is, again, a federal policy, and the resolution is basically just asking that our federal representatives give strong consideration to this policy option.
You have the draft resolution before you. Are there questions for John?
I don't have questions, John, but what I do need is the ability to better understand it. So I have not had the opportunity to dig into it. I'd like to do that before I take action on it.
So, Holmes Rabiel, I see he is in the audience, and I wonder if there are other members of the Citizens Climate Lobby.
But I know that Washington, D.C. lobbying our representatives.
Oh, that's right. Yes, the majority of folks from Chatham County are in Washington, D.C. today and tomorrow, speaking on this issue. Holmes, would you be willing to step to the podium and maybe take some questions?
Yeah, I can try.
I don't have specific questions.
Oh, you guys?
No, I have not been able to look into this or research at all. So it was mentioned a couple at our last meeting, right? But there were quite a few things happening in the last two meetings, and so I've not had the opportunity to research it.
Well, that might be a good question. What would be the best way to research this?
I mean, you can certainly go, I think I mentioned last time, Citizens Climate Lobby has a great website where they have several pages on frequently asked questions. I think there's another website called Carbon Tax, something like that.
This the group of conservative thought leaders.
Well, yeah, then there's, the Climate Leadership Council, led by George Schultz, James Baker. They also have a website with lots of answers about putting a price on carbon.
What jurisdictions already have such a carbon tax implemented?
Well, we're really working on the federal level. I mean, I think there are some states that are considering it. We feel like it would work better if the country as a whole did it, because part of the benefit of it is if we put a border adjustment in place, we would then influence other countries to put a price on carbon as well. So, I think, I'm not sure which states. I know carbon taxes have been implemented in like British Columbia. There was carbon taxes in Australia. But I think individual states haven't really done it so much yet.
So I might mention that kind of an analogous fund exists in Alaska, but its objective is not to internalize the external costs of pollution from fossil-based fuels. The Alaska Permanent Fund is a constitutionally established permanent fund that's managed by the state corporation, the Alaska Permanent Fund Corporation, to deliver dividends from the fossil fuel industry directly to Alaskan citizens. So that's another example of one of these, what I would call a progressive mechanism at delivering and returning funds to individual consumers on the backs of the fossil energy industry. And that, if you've met anybody from Alaska, they love it. It makes living in Alaska possible because the costs of living are so high here. But again, I would definitely reinforce what Holmes has said, that this is a solution that would need to be addressed at federal level because it's a market-wide tool. The idea is that it needs to apply to the entire economy. And the breadth and depth and nonpartisan nature of tremendous support for this tool is what has compelled me to support it. So, yeah.
Other questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, I have one question right quick. Do we have any other municipalities in North Carolina headed in this direction?
I don't know the answer to that. One thing I was thinking about coming over here is, if this borough wanted to consider it and be a leader in this area, we just need all the municipalities and communities that we can come forward and say to our representatives, we need to act on this urgent issue. But as far as I know, there are others in North Carolina that have done it.
Orange County or Carver or Chapel Hill?
I mean, I know there have been resolutions. I'm not sure how many have been specific to carbon fee and dividends, but that's something I could try to find out for you.
I'm also wondering if Boone had already passed it.
Holmes, could you give me the website information again?
Yeah, Citizen Climate Lobby.
Well, I suggest that we table this until our first meeting in December. That would provide me enough to better understand it.
I hope to get some information on this when I go to the National Climate Mayors meeting, the 4th and 5th of December. And maybe I can get some resources from those folks.
Find out what communities are doing.
Yeah.
I would be interested in knowing that as well. So thank you for that website. And thank you.
Also, thank you, Commissioner Bonnet, for your comments on this.
Well, this is something I certainly haven't taken the lead on. I want to express gratitude to the Citizens Climate Lobby. It's a nonpartisan organization of just regular folks who recognize that we can't solve this problem unless we work past the divisions in the aisle. And thank you very much, Holmes. And I hope that we can give it due diligence. And what date, Commissioner Fiocco, did you want to take this up again?
First meeting in December.
You have a date on that, Alice?
December 11th.
11th?
I'll second that.
Michael Fiocco moved and John Bonnet seconded, delaying this until first meeting in December, the 12th or 11th of December. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. The motion carries unanimously. Next item is a resolution regarding proposed Duke Energy price increases, and John Bunnett has led the way on this one as well. We have at our desk tonight a revised resolution pattern after some suggestions that Michael Fiocco has made. So those are incorporated into this. John?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Fiocco, for the suggestions for improvement and for the correspondence today. The version that you want to make sure you're looking at is the version that does not have Miss Alice's additions at the bottom stating the date and the line for mayor's signature. I distributed a version, revised and edited version that I made those changes about 6 o'clock. So this is the same 3 pages, but it fills the last page is the telling page. It just looks like that. Yeah, when I incorporated those citations, we'll of course pull those out before we put it in the resolution format. But as footnotes, all citations are there. And
thank you for providing those.
Certainly.
I will go back and review all of that and go to that particular area and review that before considering the resolution. Thank you very much.
So the Utilities Commission has actually had additional hearings last week. The mayor of Wilmington came out with a very strident opposition to the rate hikes. Very, very powerful language. And the staff of the Utilities Commission saw fit, because of the, I'll say, surge of opposition, to request that Duke Energy have one of their staffers actually testify, which is pretty unusual, especially given it was a staffer, an employee of Duke Energy related to the coal ash costs. So we would not in any way be on the vanguard with this. We'd be following on others' coattails. And I will just ask again if folks find, if I could direct your attention to the final page, we could just focus on those be it resolved clauses, Section 1, Section 2, and Section 3.
Are you saying you're going to change the resolution just to have that section?
No. I would just like us to review that language right now, and because I'd like to know how we feel about that.
I'm in agreement with that section 1, 2, and 3. But as I was saying, I need to read that other information that you have provided.
Okay. It hasn't changed in substance since 2 weeks ago.
Right, but you didn't provide the places that you had got your sources.
Well, the sources weren't questioned until yesterday. So.
I'm comfortable with it. At any rate, I'm not. Other than section 1, 2, and 3. I think that's one.
Well, I'd love to discuss it. I'd like to hear your points of discomfort. I tried to elicit that with a repeated invitation that I get edits or feedback. If it's too strong, I was happy to moderate it. These are the facts. The fact of the matter is that Duke Energy for years was disposing of coal ash in a way that other states had turned away from. And even after 2 disasters, continued to use those same methods of that coal ash disposal. And then they're asking us now to pay a significant portion of the cost for cleanup of that coal ash. And number two, the nuclear costs. It was in 2005 that the corporation decided that they were going to pursue construction of the Lee nuclear station. And even at the time, many observers in the energy industry were anticipating lower costs from other sources. But even if other sources were lower, new nuclear was known at that time to be exceptionally risky because of cost overruns. The projects are so large that they take on kind of inertia of their own, and they just keep increasing in cost. And, so as a result, in 2009, a very influential company called Moody's Investor Services, which issues bond ratings, made it very clear that Duke Energy's continued investment in the Lee nuclear project had caused them to reduce their bond rating to status just above junk bond status. And they used language such as implying that Duke Energy was betting the farm, and that warning that such projects could impose future rate shocks to electricity customers. Citigroup Global Markets in 2009 also warned about the risks of these investments, observing that they're so large and variable that individually each of these operational risks, price risks, construction risks could bring down the largest utility to its knees, any one of those risks individually. So we then saw the spills in Tennessee and on the Dan River, and just seems to me that it's really clear that we need to have a more moderate request for rate hikes from Duke Energy.
As I said, I definitely oppose the rate hike. And I like that section, but all the other stuff, I don't know about having that in one resolution. That's just not me.
Well, I think I mentioned in my email to you that I was supportive of, I think, well-crafted findings of this resolution 123, but I think it is measured and appropriate. And I did ask for the citations because I would, when something so extensive as this, making so many arguments, I can't say that I'm aware, clearly I'm aware of the spills and that kind of thing, but some of the other stuff I'm not aware of, and it'd be, for me to take action on it, I'd like to be able to have that opportunity too, to be as versed in it as you are, so that's where I'm coming from. Well, yeah. No, I've got them. I can go look at them and read them now and, see what it is that is being stated clearly.
Well, I think if we're heading towards a postponement of this, I will add that this afternoon, Indira Everett, who is our governmental representative from Duke Energy, called and expressed some concern because she would like to have some input on this as well. And if that's where we're headed, it would give an opportunity for Duke Energy to make a response to this if the board thought that was appropriate.
I'm agree. There's things here about Duke Energy. I don't know what the other board members think.
I welcome the information. The observation that I shared by email earlier today is that Duke Energy has the opportunity to provide that feedback, and that occurs at the Utilities Commission. Citizens are already pouring in with comments and concerns, and advocacy groups for taxpayers are also submitting their feedback to the Utilities Commission. I believe that if we wait for another 2 weeks, the proceedings may have ended, but I'm not sure. I just don't know what the time clock is at the Utilities Commission. So, you know, if there's a specific statement of fact that I've made that anyone has dispute with or questions, I think that's fine. But I think, you know, I'm asserting that these are facts. I have offered citations for those facts, and I think that Duke Energy can provide a response to that at the Utilities Commission, where they have filed their proceedings.
And let me ask the board, everybody seems to be quite in agreement on the resolution aspect of this on page 3. Would it be that it could be recrafted to simply have a couple of whereas clauses that recognize the importance of reasonable cost electric power, and then do the sections 1, 2, 3 as a manner of making an expression, especially if this is going to come before the Utilities Commission in the meantime. Is that possible to recraft this with a couple of whereases that would allow there to be agreement on the resolutions, sections 1, 2, and 3?
I would invite such as, excuse me.
Well, I think that I could go with the first 3 whereases and then the conclusion. Because I agree with the conclusion. That it needs to be an efficient operation as possible, and that our ratepayers or citizens should pay the least possible.
And although that does not give into the detail of your resolution, John Bonnet, I feel like the time is of the essence here, and perhaps short would be sweet.
I would be interested to know which whereases there's discomfort, maybe just those ones that we're normal. There's a lot of good things in the other whereases.
Well, to me, you've got Duke Power here, Duke Energy, and there's statements in here about Duke Energy that I have not had a chance to research them, because basically, of course, we didn't before ask for this information, but Commissioner Bonnet has since indicated that. So, to me, it would only be reasonable, even though they could refute it at the Utilities Commission, to hear from Duke Energy now, and then if those things are the same or proven in here, then you could leave them in.
Are the representatives of Duke Power still here? Duke Energy, I'm sorry. No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Thank you for that opportunity. I think I heard you said you made changes as of 6 p.m. And so I've only saw the former draft, which I didn't get a chance to read thoroughly. And so I certainly want to see what you presented at 6, because I certainly haven't seen that to respond to that. I'd asked the mayor to have opportunity to respond to this, because when I read it cursory today, your comments are referencing the Duke Energy Carolinas rate case. Chatham County is in the Duke Energy Progress territory.
Yes.
And that was filed on June 1st, not August 25th.
I think I was confused by your August 25th email
So
that
some of the
shared
language
that press release with us.
It's not accurate as it relates to this county.
That's correct.
And so there's things like that that I would want to be accurate before, I would hope you would want to be accurate before you pass such a resolution.
Yes. Thank you. That's been corrected, and the dollar figures associated have been corrected.
Okay, so that just generally were things that popped out. I have been in meetings all day today, so I've not read it thoroughly either because I was not even aware of it until this morning. And so that certainly is something I would want researched. As to your data about all the way back to 2005 and 9, I'm not sure all of those things are accurate either, but I certainly can find that out and send that back to you before this week's over. Unfortunately, my mother's having surgery in the morning, so I will not be in the office tomorrow, but I'm happy to look at it. But just from a cursory perspective, it seemed like you were confused about which rate case you were trying to address. And I just wanted it to be clear that Duke Energy Progress is the rate case you should be referencing if you're relating it to Chatham County. And there's certainly reason for concern about a rate increase. And in fact, I did take the time to pull a folder of information that I have just at the ready about why we're filing the rate case, about ways that we're going to help those that I think you're concerned about, your citizens that may not be able to afford it. We're hoping to have $20 million in this rate case to assist with electric bills and education and additional things for the population I believe that you're concerned about. But having never talked to you about this previously, I'm not real sure where your concerns are. But in our opinion, we believe that this is operating procedures as far as what the recovery allows because of the utility commission that we're regulated by. And so I have breakdowns that can show you the DEP rate case as well as the DEC, and I'm happy to share that with you. Even with the proposed rate increase, we would still be below the national average, which is really significant if you go and talk to some of the states that are above the national average, and I have a document that I can share with you on that as well. For us, as it relates to the coal ash, I think you're aware, but just briefly to highlight, none of the incidents that you mentioned are part of this rate case. Nothing related to Dan River or the fines or the penalties is a part of this rate case. Only those past operating dollars that we have spent are part of this. What you heard from my colleague Adrian Elder about the Powered Forward and the forward-thinking things we're doing is not a part of the rate case either. We had significant cost as it related to Hurricane Matthew, 2 hurricanes, 2 or 3 ice storms, and tropical storms. We had, I have some of the stats here that I'm happy to share with you. We had over 300 miles of down wire and 55 poles down and 5,000 damaged transformers, and the list goes on and on. So those numbers for Matthew alone were astronomical, which is a part of this rate case. So it's not just the coal ash that you referenced. There are several things. We kind of liken it to taking your car to get your tires replaced. You expect that expert to send those off safely and dispose of them. In this case, we're supposedly the experts that are disposing of coal byproducts. And fortunately, we've been living with coal in our mix for a long time, many, many decades, and we've all benefited from that. And so this is just our way of trying to make sure as fairly as we can that we distribute those costs back as we're required to do because we're regulated, unlike lots of companies. And so we are following the procedures and the guidance that we have, and so we feel that's fair, but certainly it's not a done deal until we get the final order on how much exactly, but we do think operating costs should be refunded because we've all benefited from having coal, nuclear, and everything else that's in our mix. And certainly we've been closing our coal plants long before Dan River. We were headed that way long before that incident, and we're continuing to do that. So some of the investments for our coal plants are part of this, as well as solar. We're number 2 in the country for solar. So we certainly care about renewable energies as a company and as a state. So I just thought some of this was put together, and I haven't had a chance to look at it to verify some of the things you said, but what jumped out quickly was you, or I think, are mixing DEC's rate case with DEP's, and I'm sorry for the acronyms, Duke Energy Progress, which is Legacy Progress Energy Service Territory with Duke Energy Carolinas. And so I'd love to have the opportunity to address that point, and I certainly understand your concern about any impacts to your citizens as it relates to high energy bills. We think we have an option that can help those customers as well with a lot of their energy efficiency programs and the like. And I will leave this all with Alice for you to all address if you like.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for suggesting that.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Indira Everett. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Pleasure of the board.
Excuse me. So I've just quickly written numbers next to each of the whereas clauses. There's 16. And I suggest we go through and find out which ones we can't all agree on.
So I'll tell you, is the 16.7% accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So I am able to include the first 4, but to edit 4 to read only, whereas on June 1, Duke Energy Progress announced plans to increase electricity rates charged to residential customers by 16.7% in order to cover costs of recent and future work, period. And then I would go to the now, therefore, in the remainder of the document, those 3 findings. So I'm able to support those first 4 whereas statements and the finding. I think that's as effective a document. I know it doesn't provide all of the data, but I think there's questions about the data, so if we want to do it tonight, I think that's the way to do it.
And the reasons for deleting the enumerated items?
Yeah, I don't know that those are all the... It's easier that way to not have the risk of something being misrepresented. So it is a more general statement, most definitely, but I think the finding is the same.
The finding is very important, and I think there's been expressed a unity on the finding. Did you want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved by Michael Fiocco to edit the resolution to include the first 3 paragraphs in its entirety, and the 4th with respect to the first 3 lines, and then the finding on page 3 under the now therefore be it resolved, all sections 1, 2, and 3. Is there a second to Mr. Fiocco's motion?
Second, because I do feel comfortable with that.
Seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Is there further discussion? If not, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you, John, for all your work. The 5th item is, as Victoria Bailiff stands to help us out, this is the site plan review of water reclamation facility
Excuse me.
at Chatham Park on Eubanks Road.
Thank you. This is site plan SP 2017-05.
Chatham Park investors have submitted plans for review and recommendation. The site is zone PDD and is located on parcel 61066 along US 64 Business East, just west of the Eubanks Road intersection. .14 acres of this property will be leased for the water reclamation facility. The proposal is to construct a 10,201 square foot water reclamation facility, which will include structures for maintenance, equipment, a greenhouse, and an administrative area. These elevations have been provided for you. A public hearing was held for the perimeter buffer on September 25th. The planning board was presented the site plan at their October 2nd meeting. However, the board had questions regarding the operation of the facility and the town's role, and therefore decided to table this item until their November 6th meeting. Upon hearing more from the applicant and the engineers, the board found the plans to be satisfactory and at a vote of 6-0 recommended approval. The plans for this site have been reviewed in accordance with the town's applicable development ordinances by the appropriate departments, and staff is recommending approval of the proposed request. Are there any questions?
So that the planning board had some concerns about the operation of this facility. Can you elaborate on what this is?
The applicant can explain further. There were very detailed questions that they had regarding the operations, and I cannot answer much about operations. It gets very technical. Their request was that the engineer that weren't present at the initial meeting explain further.
Try to address that for you. Brian Blake with McKinney Creek. We were at the planning board meeting, the last board meeting. There were several questions related to truck traffic being generated with the project, and we answered those questions for the planning board for the first stage, the initial phase of the project. We had estimated 1 truck per day for truck traffic, for chemical deliveries, removing the screening materials and that type of thing from the process of the facility. There was also questions about whether or not the facility was required to have a 5-day upset pond, and they're not required because the project would be a conjunctive use facility, so by state regs we would not have to have a 5-day upset pond for a facility if it was totally just for reclaimed water. There was a question about the actual process itself. I think there was a question about the plantings that's part of the process, and just wanted to know more detail about the actual plant process and how it works. So we presented it. It's a 5-stage BNR facility, biological nutrient removal facility, to be able to get down to the very stringent limits for discharge for nutrient removals and phosphorus removals that would be required for the facility. Just a question about that, because there was a lot of talk about just plantings in the greenhouse and how that actually was part of the process, and didn't understand that it was much more than that. It was actually a 5-stage process with membranes at the end for really removal of constituents that are in the water in the waste stream to be able to remove. So we addressed that question. Jeremy, was any other? I can't believe that. Those were the
more detailed
detailed questions, and we addressed those questions to the satisfaction of the couple of planning board members that had asked the previous questions, which were not able to attend that meeting, but we were at another meeting. So I think we addressed those, and from that they were satisfied with the site plan.
I think a lot of those technical questions were from Carl Schaefer, who is a soil scientist.
Correct.
So I think he deals with a different aspect of the sewer treatment process. And
looking more for spray irrigation,
right,
on-site type of questions and being involved with those types of things. And so he has some questions that were kind of generated in that same kind of fashion.
Yeah, so he was given the answers and he was satisfied.
Yep.
Brian Blake, isn't it true that to start with, this plant will be a full service, shall we say, wastewater treatment plant, and will then become in the future a reuse facility? But for the time being, this is going to be full treatment and then be discharged into our the area right near our existing waste system.
I'm not quite sure of your question, but the facility is being designed for discharge, to meet your discharge limits, but it's also being designed to meet Class 2 or reclaimed water. To the facility be able to send reclaimed water quality to your facility at your current wastewater treatment plant, which would then be the source water for your reclaim system that goes out for Serve 3M. That same water would also be able to be discharged at your current outfall number 1 location. So we're designing the plant from day one to meet both, the most stringent of both of those water quality requirements.
Thank you. But there was one point at which in your discussion you said that there was something that didn't have to be done because it was going to be a reuse plant. But in your explanation just now was very enlightening, and I appreciate that very much.
I'm sorry if I misled you. Apologies.
Further questions from the board?
A couple of things. So on the plans, it talks about the 21-inch influent line. It talks about a 12-inch water main, a 12-inch reclaimed water line, and a 12-inch force main, all to be by others. I take that to be contract language. But who is designing and permitting and constructing those other facilities?
We, in conjunction with Crescent Development and Old North Utilities, are working on those all-site utilities. Chemicrete is working on the 12-inch water line will come down Disney 64, the 12-inch effluent line, and the 12-inch force main. And then Withers and Ravenel is working on the intersector coming in to the plant. They're working on those facilities.
So all of that infrastructure will be in place prior to this plant?
It'll have to be in place, yes.
Exactly. Okay. The other question I've got is, I couldn't see on the site plan how one got from the administrative building to the educational native plant nursery area. And I'm assuming that what I've heard is there will be field trips and we'll be showing students and
the intent is right now, and they may modify that at actually how they would maybe actually do a tour on site. But the nursery, the educational nursery, is on the back side of the facility, which is the working side of the facility. Right. So right now we have it set up so that when you tour through the biological part of the process of the plant, you go through the greenhouse, you would exit through the greenhouse and walk out on top of a green roof that will house the electrical and mechanical part of the equipment. Mm-hmm. And from that, there will be an observation deck that you can observe that area from the green roof.
Okay. Yeah. So you'll overlook it.
You'll overlook it. Yes.
And will we have the opportunity to walk down to it? And
I think
because
that
we're in the
could be
operational part of the plan at that point.
Right. I think depending on how the tour is organized and who the members would be making that, they would be able to. But it will be in the backside of the working facility of the plant. So there was, some concern of being sure how that was controlled and maintained.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I saw there were some parking spaces back there, and I thought it was more appropriate for it to be, more of a private area than a public area because of what's going on.
Okay. And the parking in the back is for staff parking and for chemical truck parking and that stuff.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Jay Farrell. Motion to approve. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this evening.
The next item on the agenda is the site plan review for Thales Academy in Victoria. We have you back again.
Okay, this is site plan 2016-06. Thales Academy has submitted plans for review and recommendation. The site is located on parcels 7372 and 7386, north of Thompson Street and east of Pittsboro Fire Tower Road. The site totals 16.84 acres and is zoned PDD. The proposal is to construct a 96,944 square foot private school. The school will consist of two separate structures. Both will be 2 stories. The larger structure will house the middle school and the high school, while the smaller structure has been designated for the elementary school. They have provided elevations for this as well. This is the elementary school, and the high school, and the middle school. A public hearing for the perimeter buffer was held August 14, 2017. 2 citizens expressed concerns over the sufficiency of the buffer. The planning board reviewed these plans at their meeting on November 6, 2017. The board had general questions regarding the perimeter buffer, TPA, and the lighting of the athletic field, of which there will be none. Ultimately, the board found the plans to be satisfactory and, in a vote of 6-0, recommended approval. The plans for this site have been reviewed in accordance with the town's applicable development ordinances by the appropriate departments, and staff is recommending approval of the proposed request.
Other questions for Victoria or the engineer?
I do have one, Ms. Baylor, in reference to what the planning board, the questions they had about the perimeter buffer. What did they want specifically? And the lighting of the athletic field indicated there would be no lighting. So what was the question regarding perimeter buffer? And how did it resolve that?
There was just general questions regarding the type of buffers and where they were, and the applicant explained those thoroughly. If you have any questions about the buffer yourself, the applicant is here, and we're sure to put the landscape plan on here so you can see how the buffers will be acting. Okay.
Tell me about the athletic field. So there's not going to be any evening?
It's just a soccer field. There's not going to be any lighting for the field other than in the parking lot.
Mayor, members of the board, hello. My name is Christopher Miller. I'm a professional landscape architect with Stewart. I'm representing Thales Academy. My address is 421 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh. Regarding the perimeter buffer, this is a illustrative site plan that we put together just to help explain the site project. The elementary school here at the north, the high school in the back, and there's 3 buffers running along the north, the east, and the south, and they all meet and exceed the town's requirements. And we provided sections here. This is the one in particular that was in question from the family that owns this property here. And so we developed this section to illustrate where their property line is, the buffer that consists of existing vegetation as well as planted vegetation in front of, and sort of the distance to the building, just to help clarify what that is. In this location, I just have to look at my notes quickly. The buffer that's required along the east side generally is a 10-foot width that's required. And in general, we have an average of approximately 20 to 40 feet in that location. So again, we're saving existing vegetation and planting in front of it because we have the space to do that there.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know there were lots of folks on the south side who are concerned and expressed their concern. Public hearing was held, and so I know the commitment on that south side is a 30-foot type A buffer shown on the site plan. But the thing that I also note is that that buffer is 30 feet off of the property line, so that there's about 30 feet of existing trees to remain, 30 feet of a new type A buffer, and then really there's about another 50 feet of slope, ground, planted, seeded, until you get to the driveway or the parking spaces. So there's about 105 feet from the property line of the residential units to a physical improvement on this site, which I think that's pretty good. So I think that's good treatment. I think that's good separation.
That was my question too, to hear how the concerns of the people that spoke, how their concerns were addressed, and it sounds like it's addressed. Okay, take a photograph of that picture. The other side there.
One of the things I'd like to note is the fact that in your general notes, you have indicated in number 10, no burning. The lots are cleared and grubbed, I believe is the expression. I would like to thank you for that, because that's a very important thing that John Bonnet pointed out to me in looking at other plans that you all are doing, and that is really going to contribute to much cleaner environment. You're also in number 13 promising to install a truck tire washing station, which is, if you go down Thompson Street right now, you will see that the project on the right side, the south side of Thompson Street, has produced a tremendous amount of mud, and it's still there. And so I think that is a wonderful. You've accepted the recommendations of Rachel Thorne, the erosion control scientist with the county who has looked at this project, and I'm particularly pleased that's been incorporated.
Thank you. Thank you for the neighborliness. Welcome.
Any further questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Michael Pietro, seconded by William Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Get down to my agenda here. Our next item, Victoria is going to take us through Chatham Transit application for special use permit.
This is site plan. Site plan 2017-06. The Chatham Transit Network has submitted plans for review and recommendation. This 4.27 acre site is located at 127 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and is zoned M2 heavy industrial. The proposal is to upgrade this site, previously used as a parking facility by Chatham County, to meet the needs of the Chatham Transit Network. All of the buildings on the site are to be removed, with the exception of one structure which totals approximately 3,000 square feet. The largest building currently on site will be replaced with a new 5,184 square foot structure. The Planning Board reviewed these plans at their meeting on November 6, 2017. The Board had general questions regarding the use of this site, but found the plans to be satisfactory and voted to recommend approval in a vote of 6-0. The plans for this site have been reviewed in accordance with the town's applicable development ordinances by the appropriate departments, and staff is recommending approval of the proposed request. Are there any questions?
Questions for Victoria Bennett?
I do have one question. That general area years ago was the garage, the county garage, and they did change oil and so forth and so on there. Is the ground contaminated? Are they going to research that?
That is, there are monitoring wells on the site plan, which tells me it must be. We have, who do we have? Speaking on behalf of.
Is the applicant here?
No.
Them here.
Not sure why. They're not here.
Well, I hesitate in a sense to ask you to answer a question that somebody else should answer, Randy Bowler.
I'll just provide the information that was told to me when I was mayor and was on the board of the board. There was, and you can verify this, and probably staff can look on the site for DEQ or DENR where they keep track of this, but it was true that there was some type of spill roughly in 1990, and I think that Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin might have been at the same meeting where we discussed it, the Fair Board. So there is some monitoring there. I don't know what the status of it is today, but that was at that time, and you can still verify it on the website and see how DENR classifies it.
Fred Royal, did you have some information on it?
I was told by the applicant, and we could verify this, that they did pull out the old buried tanks for fuel and replace them with, modern UST underground storage tank, meeting modern specifications. And they are removing a couple above ground tanks that we noted in earlier phases of the review. But and I think they did an environmental assessment review initially, but I don't know if they've done any detailed analysis of the existing condition of the soil today. I don't believe.
As long as the planning board, there was mention of a remediation project as part of this project. Remediation, soil remediation.
Okay.
But I don't know the details.
From the planning board meeting that I attended, did I gather correctly that there will be new sidewalk added with this project?
That's correct.
So there'll be an improvement for the public's enjoyment as well?
Yes.
To get back and forth perhaps to the county fair and
Correct.
other things. And would you be able to help us understand where the demolition will occur and where the existing building is going to be retained?
This is going to be the building that's going to be retained. The other structure that was previously here, this largest building on site, we're going to replace that one with this. There's other various smaller
Sheds.
structures, and that's all going to be gone from there. It's just going to be these two main structures right here.
Wasn't there something about the fence when somebody removed off there, the chain link fence?
Along the right of way, it's going to be moved back.
Yeah. It's going to be taken out of the right of way and put on private property.
Oh, okay, so it was going to be 10 foot, pushed back. Well, that's not good.
And there'll be curb and gutter over the sidewalk.
And the sidewalk will go from 64 to that site? Or?
No, this site doesn't meet 64, so they're only going to do what's in front of their property.
Of course.
I don't have a problem with the project except for the thing with the soil. But you said that was rectified.
We can look into that.
Okay.
I would imagine if there was a transfer, if they were selling property, that they would be required to do that kind of testing. That would be between the buyer and the seller.
That's county property.
Yeah.
To county.
They'd be held liable if they.
Still county property.
Van Lease.
If the applicant were with us, I was going to inquire about their future plans for transition to battery electric transit vehicles. Given that this is a site plan, I looked very carefully trying to find if they had anything in that direction, and even had a citizen inquire as well. The underground electric is in the key, but I couldn't see any indicated any changes to underground or overhead electric. You're all aware of it?
It hasn't come up in the review of them using alternative vehicles.
Well, Mr. Jones or Ms. Bailiff, if you're able to communicate to them, I would appreciate you letting them know that in 2018, probably, and in 2019 for sure, there will be settlement funds resulting from the VW lawsuits where the VW was caught cheating on their emissions. And there will be funds for infrastructure. And so Chatham Transit should take advantage of that, should be planning now and thinking about replacing some of their vehicles with battery electric vehicles. It's a real opportunity for air pollution reductions. Thank you very much.
One of the concerns I've got, though, is right now we've got along the frontage here, obviously a lot of asphalt, but that asphalt gets used by the fairgrounds for parking. It looks like that would be going away, so we'd be losing quite a bit of parking.
Our ordinance does not allow for backing into the right-of-way, so that was one issue we had. Also, our ordinance does not allow for driveways wider than 36 feet. They have met all the requirements of our ordinances.
Right, but I think we probably would allow exceptions for existing conditions because we've got people backing into the right-of-way who have for a long time, making parking available. I would argue that I don't think curb and gutter necessarily defines the limits of a driveway. I think it could be done with striping. So, I think we're losing.
They currently park on the street? Is that what we're...
No. It's off of it's out of the roadway.
So that we'd have, the applicant was here, we'd have to ask them that. They may not want to continue that arrangement moving forward as well, so I would hate to mess plans up to not ask them if they want to continue that arrangement.
No, that's appropriate. I'd like to ask them. Really, honestly.
I appreciate that, and it brings to mind just an odd idea that I had thinking about so many of the events that we're having nowadays, that where our downtown is congested with parking for special events, and wondering if they might be willing to start a special event shuttle, say from Alpha Install to here, from Lowe's parking lot to here, things like that.
Well, they have done that for specific events. Main Street has gotten them to participate and do that. Yeah, it's excellent. It's a lot of use.
Why don't we have them come back in 2 weeks? I don't think that would be detrimental to their plan. We can have these questions out.
Appreciate it.
Is there a motion?
Motion to table for 2 weeks.
Second. Motion by Michael Field, seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Next item under old business is hotel incentives. Brian Brucebeck will lead us through that.
Thanks, Mayor Perry. The issue you have before you this evening is a continuation of a discussion that you have had on a few previous meetings, going all the way back to February. You received a presentation request from Eco Partners. You'll recall that Eco Partners is a firm that's been selected by Chatham Park to develop that area near the corner of 15501 and Russet Run that I think we now a little bit more commonly referred to as the Mosaic Project. That Mosaic Project is the location for a contemplated brand hotel. Back in February, Mr. Bradley, Kirk Bradley from Eco Partners, who is here with us this evening, as well as Mr. Touchstone from the Chatham County Economic Development Corporation, presented the request from the town of Pittsboro for ad valorem property tax incentives to help build the project at a slightly faster pace than maybe it would under normal tax conditions. You'll recall that the county, Chatham County, had previously approved an incentive package, their most aggressive, I guess I'd describe it, incentive package that was not really based on, I mean, it kind of went above and beyond what their incentive policy is. And their stated purpose in allowing the incentives from the county's perspective was to help support the new agricultural conference center that's out on the west side that you guys have been to now once or twice, probably a handful of times. And I'll be there tomorrow morning as well. But there will be a lot of events that are taking place out there, and they feel like a hotel could help support the considerable investment that the county made in that facility in Pittsboro. So previous or subsequent discussions to that, you requested that we take a look at some incentive possibilities from the town's perspective, as well as taking a look at what we might be able to fashion as far as commitments from the developer. And I think you have before you this evening the most recent slideshow from that May 22nd public hearing, where we discussed those, I guess, where we were to that point in time. You also have in your packet this evening a response from Mr. Bradley from ECO on commitments, the most recent commitments that they'd be willing to offer as part of this project. The commitments that you see in the slideshow, the commitments that I've offered in the packet, I think update the commitments that you see in the slideshow that we had discussed on that evening. But I think to the naked eye, they're pretty close to what we had discussed, and I think I might want, at this point in time, have Mr. Bradley come up and talk a little bit more about the project. However, I would just also to point you to the different incentives that we looked at, and I think, as memory serves me, the one that was preferred up to that point in time was an incentive package that would have a 5-year period. It was flat at 50% of its taxable value, and it kept that rate over a 5-year period. Now, during the public hearing, we also had some discussion, you'll recall, from members of the public, including bed and breakfasts, about possible incentives that you might be willing to consider for them. We haven't formalized anything, but there certainly may be one or two ideas that we could offer on that front as well. But at this point in time, I'd ask Mr. Bradley if he had any comments or quick additions, I guess, to what we've talked about to this point, and answer any questions you might have.
Kirk Bradley with Echo CP Partners, LLC, and my address is 603 Carthage Street, Sanford, North Carolina. And I think we responded with the commitments we felt like we could live with. I'm happy to elaborate on any of those if you have specific questions. And as we've stated in previous sessions, that having the ability to have this incentive will be important in accelerating the development of the hotel. It's pretty capital intensive, and the market is a little green, and so we feel like having the incentive will allow the hotel operator to start earlier than they might otherwise. And that was the case we made to the county, and they passed, as Mr. Grusbeck said, their maximum incentive that they allow, which I think is 90, 80, 70, 60% of property tax rebate. over the first 5 years. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Before I do questions, I will have one question. I had talked to Commissioner Bonnet specifically about this and some others about the LEED construction standards, and I know what you want this property to be is the most efficient hotel that it can be, and it's interesting that the hotel operators' incentives are for the same thing. We want to minimize water use and things of that nature. I think this property will be either one of the major flags, Hilton or Marriott, and both of them have very specific standards in terms of the fixtures that you use and how efficient they are. Certainly have standards, very high SEER standards, which is the efficiency rating for the HVAC, and so we feel like the vast majority of the energy and water benefits are incorporated either into the building code design, low flow toilets, or the standards of the major branded hotels. And some of the requirements are LEED, are very costly without a lot of specific benefit. So that was the reason we said that we think meet most of the LEED sort of standards as it related to energy and water consumption, but not necessarily be a LEED certified property. So I'm happy to answer any questions there.
Mr. Bradley, thank you very much for those points. And I also recall our conversation. I appreciate your engaging the dialogue. I think that you were not able to attend a June 12 presentation by a fellow named Ryan Miller with the North Carolina Building Performance Association. But my takeaway from that on that occasion, his very helpful presentation, was that LEED is just one of many third-party certifiers of building performance. Mm-hmm. And I think that I had also spoken to you stating that my concern and preference for LEED was just about building performance. We need to demonstrate to the public, since this is going to be a very significant public gateway, that it's the performance of the building that we're proud about, not a checklist. So I'm very sorry that wasn't communicated to you, and that I didn't pick up the phone and call you back about it myself. But I do recall speaking about it in public, your public session several times, especially with regard to our town hall. I think it's about assuring the public that we have done the due diligence to have a third party tell us that the building will perform the way it's designed and engineered to perform. These systems are all so complex, and if they don't work well together, our money is wasted. So I'm sure you can appreciate that. And that there may be, though, a disconnect between you as the developer and the building operator, hotel operator company. So I would very much like to hear what you could do in regards to third-party certification of the performance of the building instead of your generous offer here on LEED conformity.
I don't know. I mean, we obviously, the hotel will have a professional engineer design it and can articulate what the systems that they've employed and the standards. We can, I'm sure, issue a report to the town that says, these are the things we've done. Here's the, whatever they may be in terms of lighting fixtures and everything after the hotel's not designed yet. So once it's designed, we can produce that report. But that would be the second party. And the objective here is to have a third party, whether it's there's an ASHRAE standard, there's an EPA performance standard, there would be the LEED option. I think it's called ARC from the U.S. Green Building Council. EPA's Energy Star, I think I already mentioned. So I don't have it because all these things haven't been picked, but I can say that we can produce what we are. Most of the Energy Star types. I know that most of the major brands have require Energy Star rating on, again, those high impact things like HVA systems and other lighting fixtures and what have you. So I think if we could match up those, if we had it picked and we could match those up and show them to you, it would be one of those standards, or at least the vast majority of the high impact systems would. And that was what I was trying to offer in that response.
More questions for Kurt Bradley?
I don't have any question, but I just, Brad, first and foremost, we need a hotel band. I'm all for that. The incentives, I really have a problem with this because I wonder when we're going to stop. When are we going to, what's next incentive the town going to give? I really have a problem with this incentive. I don't know which way I'm going to vote, whatever we do. But we do need a hotel. But before I could vote on any kind of incentive, I feel like we should have a brand name hotel before we just say, hey, it possibly might be a Marriott. Well, you don't get incentive, it's going to be a Hotel 6. It's going to be a Red Roof Inn.
I think you could put that in the incentive, that it would have to be a major branded property for the incentive to be applicable. We'd accept that. Either one of the brands by Marriott or Hilton, say. Those are the two major branded reservation systems, which could be a Hampton Inn, it could be a Town Place Suites. There's a lot of brands within the Marriott and Hilton brands, but I think that's a performance standard, like the other stuff that we'd be happy for you to put in place. If we did bring a Motel 6, we wouldn't get the incentive.
I hope we wouldn't, though. We wouldn't bring a Motel 6.
Well, we're not planning to put one there, but I think if you wanted your assurance, that's certainly something you could put in the incentive, and we would be happy with that, to accept that.
Thank you. I feel uncomfortable because we don't have an incentive policy in place. So it's difficult to say, okay, we do this, and that's nothing to do with you. This is something we don't have yet. This is an incentive policy. I feel like this spot is a great spot to begin with because it's right off 1551 and Highway 64. At the same time, it's nice by providing incentives, we do get some input about, having some of these commitments and the right incentive for us to provide incentives. But like I say, I feel much more comfortable if we had an incentive policy in place.
Well, at least as far as the incentive policy that the county has in place, again, they didn't follow their policy when they reviewed this particular request. So I think the larger issue, you have a very good point. We could probably benefit in the long run from an incentives policy. At least from the county's perspective, they didn't apply theirs. Their well-developed, well-intentioned third-party policy, they didn't apply it to this case.
What would be the consequences if these commitments were not met?
No, that's what
it's paid in, the incentive is paid in arrears.
Yeah.
Okay.
So unless you meet those conditions, you don't get the rebate.
And that's part of the mechanics that, if I'm disappointed, I want us to work on. And my cliff notes on that is that the developer has an annual report to the EDC. I think that's already kind of included. EDC does a presentation to this board, and then this board makes the decision as to whether or not the incentive is earned. So I have warmed to the incentive. I recognize that if we can help get it here faster and, quite frankly, get jobs here quicker, because I've spoken to a lot of people in the last several months. I was out there trying to get elected, so talking to people more than usual. And there are a lot of people who would benefit from these jobs. A lot of folks, and that's the basis for my math in all of this. And that, based on $14 million, and I think it was 25 employees, an average salary of $27,000. I met a lot of people who would love to have a job paying them $27,000. And I'm thinking that in this incentive package, if we can provide an incentive, which is very close to what's been discussed here already, that provides for one of those jobs over the average of the 5 years of this incentive, I would propose that in years 1 and 2, the incentive is equal to 40%. 3 and 4 is 45%, and year 5 is 53%. That's going to get $27,000 a year in a incentive package. It's weighted towards the back end of this because hopefully we'll have more tax revenue coming in as opposed to front loading it. So that's what I would propose if we were to do it. But reading through this, I found that the conditions for the agreements, commitments, changed quite a bit between a previous version and this version. And I prefer the former versions.
Well, that was the ones that you proposed, and we couldn't accept the incentive on that basis.
Okay.
And so I talked to Mr. Grusbeck, and he said, well, why don't you propose what conditions you felt you could. So that's the reason for what those were kind of Pittsburgh's proposed conditions back in May or June or whatever.
And I thought they had come from you.
No.
Okay.
So what was on that one that
Well, I did list everything, and so the new commitment.
Before you get too far into it,
Okay.
they're right here.
Number 3.
Are you talking about that? Oh, okay.
They're over the course of this page.
One was
Those
very
two
specific that we had to hire 12 employees from this zip code, which
Right.
is difficult to do. So, actually, this is another specific conversation I had with Commissioner Bonds. It's our incentive to hire local people because they have less to drive and all that kind of stuff. And so the people you talked about during your election. But to commit to a specific number from a very, very small zip code is just hard to do in today's labor market. So that was the.
I don't think you'd have any trouble at all.
Well, I hope we wouldn't, but.
I agree. I don't think it would be a problem. I think that was just under half of the 25 employees. But I think the new commitment simply says more than one, which I think is the opposite end of the spectrum for me. I'd like to see a better commitment to the number of employees. The new commitment talks about annual report documenting the effort prior to the incentive. Well, the old commitment included an annual report to the EDC, including the documentation of the effort. The new commitment says to have an annual report, but is silent on what it is, whether or not that will be applied for prior to the incentive. The second item, the new commitment, the old commitment included trying to hire locals for construction and maintenance. All right, so that one says maintenance there too, but the one I've got in my packet does not include maintenance.
The one you have in your packet this evening says this.
This document, not part of the.
These were the last commitments that we had discussed based on your input.
What I'm saying is there is a document in here that does not say that. That is part of our packet. It's page 2 of the memorandum.
Right. That's the new commitments that Mr. Bradley is offering.
That's okay. Good.
That's what I in my preamble we're all getting a little fuzzy, but in my preamble, that's what I did mention. The second page of this were the new commitments, and I pointed out that the commitments that are in the spreadsheet are updated to this as far as the current offer. So these were the commitments that you as a board had directed me to assemble. We put those together. We discussed those at the public hearing. Mr. Bradley then in turn said, I'm not so sure. I want to kind of let me take a crack at some wording, and then he produced the second page of your handout.
Excellent. So, what I'm talking about is the new commitments that are on page 2.
Correct.
And I'm finding them different than this, and I'm trying to explain the issues that I have with those. And so right there it does say it's going to use locals for construction and maintenance, but the new commitment says nothing about maintenance.
That would be okay.
Okay. Because construction is a single event. Maintenance is ongoing.
Typically, the maintenance is done mostly. Depends on how you're defining maintenance, but most maintenance is done by employees. Yes.
We had a really good commitment about local artists being displayed in, I think, the facility, and now I think it is qualified to make all reasonable efforts. Yeah. And I don't disagree that is reasonable language, but I'd like to be a bit more firm on that and say it's just going to happen.
Yeah. I agree. It shouldn't be a hard stretch. I think there's plenty of Chatham County artists. I don't know that I'm not going to prescribe this for sure, but they'd be happy to have their replicated copies on the walls rather than originals. So it really shouldn't be any more expensive than what you can get elsewhere. So.
One thing, there is some flexibility, and one of the reasons we changed the language is most of the brands have artistic packages that they want you to do, and they kind of give you limited areas where you can have local input, so that's part of the reason for that less specific language. So I think the intent of everything we're doing out there and everybody we're working with is to encourage them to use local folks. It's when you make a hard and fast commitment, and then there's a structural requirement of the brand that would put us in conflict. That was our concern there. So every painting in every room couldn't be necessarily probably a local artist, and that's how we felt the other language was that specificity. If you're talking about just the lobby, if they just to make sure that local artists are displayed versus all art. That kind of language would probably be okay.
Say in the public areas, but that would include like restaurants, lobbies, and there's rooms for corporate events.
So I think there's room to work on that language.
I understand it might be difficult to get into the way.
Yeah, and some of the others too, there may be just some flexibility. We didn't want a requirement that every piece of art had to be local, and that was how we felt like the other language was directionally pushing us. So.
I think also too you have a bit of the flexibility. There's flexibility, true. I think there's a bit of control on your part, because in order to receive the benefit, as I talked a little bit about earlier, we have to verify through EDC that they're actually making these quote-unquote reasonable efforts. So if there is some discrepancy on whether or not we feel like enough effort's being made, we can certainly, I think that's certainly something that we would need to discuss with ECO before we fully authorize that payment. It's kind of a similar process to what we did with Alpha Install way back when we had to verify. We would have to go out and verify certain purchases and whether or not they were conforming to the terms of the agreement. EDC assisted us on that. Staff had some amount of follow-up, at least as far as on-site. We would certify then that the conditions of that particular grant program were being fulfilled, and then we and then we would execute the grant if it was appropriate. I think we would have some sort of similar checks and balances process with this as well if we got to that point, whatever kind of terms you guys ultimately decided you wanted to do.
Agreed. I just think we want to be weighted towards the end where it's going to happen.
Okay.
Number 4 has another qualifier. 4 originally was talking about marketing, allowing local businesses to put some materials, marketing materials, in the lobby. And I think now it's qualified based on the hotel operator's agreement, which, we want to bring you here and we want you to help our businesses locally too. We don't want you to, just ignore us. So I think it would be helpful, appropriate to return to the former language that said, yeah, it'll be available, that there will be a kiosk or there'll be something. I mean, quite frankly, I think most hotels do that. They want to show you what's going on locally so you can go enjoy yourself while you're working. So I would like to remove the language that says that the hotel operator agreement has the ability simply to put the kibosh on that. There was deleted any mention of the web links on the hotel website to local businesses, maybe the local.
That is a standard, because those things are controlled by the brand, and the way they do that, they don't. They usually have. Well, they allow some things, but it's just within the limitations of the system. Is what we were saying. That is a very systematized. If you've ever used a Hampton Inn or something, you go to the master reservation, and then it clicks down in a series of menus, and usually there's some local attraction type of link, things to do they have, but it's very prescribed what can and can't be on there, and that's not a localized decision. That's the issue there. So I think we said we'd be willing to.
I think it went away.
Yes.
So there's no commitment to do that at all, or to work with the hotel operator to do that.
Correct, because we just didn't know what flexibility we would have. So
maybe this is where you use all reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to put a qualifier in there, the problem is the way y'all word it was will provide, and so because of some of the things we explored, we just took it away. I mean, we're happy to promote local, and that's part of the objective. But if we can have some more flexible language, that's fine.
It's for a tourism website. With restaurants and events and that kind of thing. So maybe there's only one.
Yeah, it would link it to. That's right. That's typically what you see happen is they link it to the local visitors bureau.
Or to Main Street or PBA.
That's what I'd like to see.
PBA doesn't really do that.
Hopefully they'll up their game.
It's really hard to maintain something like that.
So I think, John, you were dealing with item 7 about lead.
Yeah.
So you were not necessarily requiring lead?
No, and I feel like I've said this before. I think lead is just one of many, and the principle of having third-party confirmation of building performance is the important thing. LEED does that, but only if you get the actual certification. And the checklist itself it doesn't guarantee you the performance. It doesn't guarantee you the energy savings. It doesn't necessarily guarantee the environmental benefits. I think what I'll do is have Ryan Miller get in touch with you, because he's far more conversant on the great array of different service providers and certification schemes. And I would very much like you to be aware of that great array of choices. So that's what I'll hold off on. Tonight when I get home, I'll make that introduction by email. I think I've got your information.
Any further questions or comments?
Only, are you going to take a crack at writing the commitments, or are we going to take a crack at rewriting the commitments?
I mean, I think we have to mutually determine what, I think we have to determine what exactly the crack was with this discussion. I mean, I can revisit that and then circle back with Mr. Bradley.
Okay, and I'll be happy to provide my notes.
Okay.
Might be thinking as well about incentives that we can give to our B&B population. Because we were really overwhelmed, I think, at the public hearing about the folks that felt that they had been marginalized in preference to providing incentives for your hotel project for Bradley. And I don't know, maybe the facade grant could be something that could sort of spruce up. I mean, I hate to say that in a way because it makes it sound like the B&Bs are disreputable or something, which they're not. They're just lovely. But maybe we could figure out some funding mechanism that could give them some degree of benefit.
Because they've certainly benefited the town too, especially if the downtown and small business may get to stay.
Absolutely.
And that's all hire people too. I mean, like, I don't know how many people, small employees, but it's probably got to be at least 6 people, which is half of what you're talking about.
Mr. Grusbeck, you mentioned earlier that you have been speaking with some of the B&B operators?
No, they were speaking to us at the last meeting, and that's one of the things that Mayor Perry just brought up, I think, very well. I think, I mean, I have kicked around 1 or 2 ideas, like modifying our facade improvement program to possibly offer that as a way to further, for the B&B owners to further invest in their businesses, kind of keep them viable. The bottom line, I think they're 2 separate markets. I think the 2 can coexist. But I think it's a fair question to ask, is there anything that we can do to help support them as well? So if there's a way to maybe take a look at our existing facade improvement program, which we haven't spent all of the money on our facade program, and we've never reached that $15,000 limit. It's highly resistant. There may be some room there to help the B&Bs as well, if that's a possibility. I want to do a little bit of looking at how we would need to tailor the program to fit the B&Bs as well, vis-a-vis our downtown and sort of the original purpose of how we established it in the downtown. And staff and Mr. Messick can certainly take a look at that as well, if that's a direction you think is worth pursuing.
I think that's a good idea, because there were several that did show, which were here at the public hearing, and they addressed certain concerns, and I would be more than happy for you to find some type of way to accommodate them. I really agree with that, and also what Commissioner Foley had said about having an incentive program in place in general. I think that would also help. Maybe we could work on that too. But we definitely do need to compare.
Yes.
And shuttle to Barrington, that's where some business will go from.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a motion to continue this or to bring it up at a specific date?
I'll say that I'd like a motion that we revise the commitments and work with the applicant until we're satisfied.
What about the incentive levels, which we haven't really talked about, what do we do? We could create something completely different from what we've actually done.
Well, that's where I need to come up with those figures.
Could you state those again?
Yeah. Year 1 and 2 would be at 40%.
Email these to us.
3 and 4 would be at 45%. 5 would be 53%.
So we're continuing this?
That's pretty much the example number 3, right?
It's really close, I think.
Yeah. 40, 45, 50, and 60.
Yeah, and this one's 45, 53.
Yeah. 53.
Oh, yeah.
All right. You've heard Michael's motion, which is to revise the commitments and work with the applicant and to develop some statement of policy that we include as well, and to look at what incentives we might be able to provide to the individual B&Bs in the town.
Maybe we should call it something different, call it a support. Because we have to start raising the question, is there other B&Bs that open up, are they going to get it also? I mean, it's really just complicated.
Yeah, well, the state, regarding the B&Bs, most of your B&Bs are also the owner's home. So, I mean, of course it is, but I mean, what if somebody wants to turn their home in, like they're doing in Raleigh, to a one-room apartment, or they tried to do?
All the Airbnb.
Fine line.
Well, I think that's part of the whole policy. That it would deal with those kind of issues as well.
And then let's bring it back when we have these pieces in place. Michael's motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Michael Chiappa, second by Beth Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. If we could take the second item under old business before we take our break. Taylor Hobbs is here in the audience and has some other things he needs to be doing. Could we hear from you?
I can be as quick or as lengthy as you want me to be, although if I get lengthy, it may not be as intelligible, so bear with me. Are we going into this item now?
Let's do that and then take a break. Well,
let's take a break.
Yeah, thank you. I'd have a hard time paying attention. I'll be real fast. 5 minutes? Okay. So move? So move.
Back in session, is there a motion to resume?
So move.
Motion made by Jay Farrell, seconded by John Bonnet. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. We have our next item is Town Hall Phase 1, pre-design services scope of work, and Brian Griesbeck is about to tell us the moderate to short story of what we need to understand here.
Agreed. Back in September, you authorized the manager to negotiate a contract with Hobbs for space use assessment and building design for the new town hall. Hobbs responded with the document that we have before you this evening, which is phase 1 of a design process. This phase 1 process would include the building program work, essentially coming up with a site plan and identifying costs as well. I think in that also we have incorporated some estimates and I guess I'd call it design work for demolition of the existing building. The work also includes some public meetings. There would be, I think we identified 2 public meetings with board and 1 public meeting. But Taylor Hobbs, who's with us this evening, has indicated that we can be kind of flexible in how we design that. I think if you approved the request tonight to amend the budget, the project budget for design services in the amount of $39,750, what we would do is go ahead, come up with a services contract. I would review that contract with Mr. Messick. And then if everything was in line with the contract, we'd go ahead and execute that. And then the first part would be, working on the building program, coming up with the basic design, and then bringing that back to you, and then bringing that to the public in some way, shape, or form. As the Hobbs proposal, phase 1 proposal indicates, it's also a process that's expected to take about 2 months. So following that 2-month period, if everything was in line, we would begin the process of Phase 2, which is more in-depth design and then contract bidding and then contract management. As I indicated, we have Mr. Hobbs here this evening, and I don't know if Taylor, if I've covered everything, or if you want to anything you want to say. The action requested tonight is to, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, is to authorize the manager to execute a contract when it's ready, and then to approve the ordinance to amend the capital project budget for the town hall project in the amount of $39,750. And we've also attached on the second page the project budget ordinance amendment there as well. So with that, I would open it up for any comments, questions, or concerns that you have this evening.
Well, I'm remembering the wonderful job that was done with respect to public input on the historic courthouse after the fire. And although that was a much more complex process, it showed the community how much we cared about listening to them. And I don't know that we need to replicate it completely, but Taylor, I believe you were instrumental in designing that kind of community. I'd really like to have more than just one meeting with citizens, but what does the board think of that?
I love that idea. I mean, I think it'd be great for the public to view this not as the town board and staff town hall, it's the community town hall, and that's a great way to create to people that sense.
Sure.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. This is Siobhan File, a partner in our firm as well. There will be more than one. We have one in the pre-design phase, and then I think we have two in the Phase 2 phase. So we can add to that if that's what the board prefers. But we sort of go through this process and show our results in public forum at the end of Phase 1. And take that input into Phase 2, where it will be further developed and further meetings will take, public meetings will take. That was the thought process. But if you want more in Phase 1, we can do that. Right now, we just have one listed in Phase 1. So
We just don't want people to think it's a fait accompli and that they really do have to.
Sure. We're open to that.
I think Phase 1 is really just getting schematic bones together.
And just defining the scope of how information gathering, output, what is it, what's included in the scope of services, what is the actual construction budget and total project budget, those types of sort of getting our arms around the scope.
But it kind of makes sense that that's the point at which there's enough information for the public to digest and comment on.
At Phase 2.
Well, at the end of Phase 1.
Yeah, that's
when there is something really.
That's how it was approached.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that sounds reasonable, like Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 2. It's reasonable.
It seemed like that makes sense to us.
Where are we on the soil investigations? Is any testing or drilling or review of the environmental been done?
We've had the Phase 1. We would do the Phase 2 in either, I don't know whether we would do that. We've had the Phase 1 environmental testing. I don't know whether we would do Phase 1, or I don't know whether we would need to go to a Phase 2 as part of the Phase 1 pre-design, or whether we would do that in the Phase 2.
I mean, as far as soil borings, I would say sooner the better. We'll know what we have. But that could be run concurrently with Phase 1. I think we could just look at that. Certainly, more information than that, certainly.
But that's not in your scope, so that's something the town will provide you.
Correct.
Are we keeping updates with the county on in which direction we're going on?
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Michael Pioca, second by Pat Wilson Ford. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
so much.
Thanks.
My name? Yes, Siobhan. Okay.
Next item under new business is request for annexation of the Eubanks Road property from Victoria Bailiff. Back with us.
Okay, this is annexation 2017-06. Chatham Park investors have proposed the annexation of 10.22 acres located on the northwest corner of the U.S. Highway 64 business and Eubanks Road intersection. The parcel is zoned PDD and is currently vacant. Staff is recommending adoption of the annexation ordinance.
Questions for Victoria? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Special use permit at Christie's Florist and Gift Shop is next up, and we had a public hearing on that at last meeting, and now it's before us for the special use permit.
Correct. This is special use permit 2017-04. Denise DeFrancesco and Christy Koch are requesting a special use permit to operate a gift shop along U.S. Highway 64 Business West in the RA2 zoning district, where antique and gift retail stores are required to obtain special use permits. The applicants will be using the existing structures on their property for their business. The structure to be used as the gift shop is 1,200 square feet. The combined area of the structures to be used is 1,900 square feet, requiring 10 parking spaces, which can be met by the current parking lot. A public hearing was held, as the mayor said, on October 23rd. No citizen presented evidence for or against the request. However, questions were posed regarding hours of operation, expected volume of customers, and use of structures on the site. The planning board reviewed these plans at their meeting on November 6th. The board expressed no concerns and voted to recommend approval of the review. Staff is also recommending approval of the request.
Questions for Victoria?
I just have a comment. I spoke with a neighbor that lives across the street, and she's thrilled with the idea of having this business there. And she's a landscaper, and she needs a landscaper.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by Jay Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Wonderful. Next, we're going to work with Jeff Jones on Chatham Park Master Plan Text Agreement and additional elements.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. What you have in for tonight is the second set of elements. Remember, we had a workshop back in September on these particular elements, which is the open space, tree protection, landscaping, and stormwater element. Staff gave you all the revised open space element at the last meeting. That was sort of a handout that we gave to you. And during that time, staff has reviewed the open space element. We've received late last week summaries of the revised open space element along with the other four with the general provisions and definitions, summaries of those changes as well. For tree protection, landscaping, and stormwater, we received those last week. You just received them. We're here for any questions that you might have on those, but we understand that there's going to be some time needed to read through those revisions, and particularly the summary document that was prepared by Chatham Park. Chatham Park is here, staff is here to talk about the open space element. Since we've had that for a few weeks now and received the summary page in our packets this week, on the open space. Staff is more than comfortable moving forward with this, if the board is, and certainly we could answer any questions and ask questions of the applicant as well. Let's see. This is just a process that we've been going through for a little while now. We had the public hearing on these particular elements back in March. We went through the spring and summer and a good bit of the fall, contemplating these elements, having workshops, and ultimately got to a point where Chatham Park has proposed revisions to all of these elements based off of feedback received at various public hearings, staff, and at the workshop in particular. Again, we can discuss the open space element or all the elements or whatever the board's pleasure for tonight is.
Well, I'm personally only able to deal with the open space. We've had that in every single time on that one. Not the others.
And I would agree. Fred and I have both not had time to read through the remaining elements.
And the only is I can't help but think that the open space element has a fair amount tied in with the tree protection additional element. What is your thought about that?
As we've talked in other settings, that a lot of these elements are interrelated. I think one of the things we talked about recently was the solar farm and how the board's desire for trees to be protected was sort of conflated with open space. And yes, that is a correct statement that we have, that they are interrelated, and Chatham Park is making it so because some of the provisions for open space are tree protection areas and or landscaping areas that they're proposing to be open space. And those things such as thoroughfare buffers and medians, they put qualifiers in there now that was not there before, reacting to some feedback that they heard from this board. Whether those qualifiers are enough for you all to consider, that's really where you all would want to discuss that, either amongst yourself or with staff or with the applicant. But yes, there is an appearance that one tree or one green space of land could qualify for a number of different elements, being open space or tree protection or parkland or what have you. So those are real issues. I think the master plan sets it up that it can do those things. But how you qualify what is open space of these areas owned by HOAs or property owners associations, such as medians and or thoroughfare buffers or perimeter buffers outside of natural areas that would be preserved and saved, such as riparian buffers. That's where you could probably work in some additional qualifiers if you want to do that. Those are things that Chatham Park is looking for feedback on. Did they go enough to address those things that was brought up at a workshop or at a subsequent meeting that we've had, where feedback has been given on some of these items?
Michael, I remember you had some strong feelings about acreage limitations or medians being counted as open space. Have they been resolved in the most recent draft?
I'll say many of them. Like main one is still not resolved. So I want to say again tonight what I think about that. I've taken the option or the opportunity to actually suggest text to the document as opposed to suggesting what my idea is. And so I've got several of those. But some, again, I'm just going to state an idea. I'm happy with some of those. As well. Well, I'll start on page 1. And there's a definition. I am on the version that we were handed at our last meeting's total. These are red marked up one. Okay. And we talked, there is a definition of building floor area and a gross square footage for calculations. And in that statement, it talks about the gross horizontal area of all floors measured from the exterior walls or from the center line. And I would add a qualifier there. From the center line of a common wall. I think that would be more appropriate. I don't want us to get confused with exterior walls versus the center lines of walls. It's appropriate when there's a shared wall. I mean, I'm probably being picky, but I don't want us to find ourselves confused again, because ultimately it's probably not even necessary to even mention the center line, because we're talking about the exterior walls.
When you mention the center line, are you just talking about a wall that's shared with an adjoining wall, or not? I mean, if there's no shared walls, there wouldn't be
a center line.
Correct.
Right, and so we don't even need to mention center line, perhaps. But if we're going to, then it seems to me it's talking about a common wall.
A common wall would not necessarily be an exterior wall.
Correct.
That's right. It would more than likely be an interior wall.
Is there a center line of an exterior wall? I think we want to talk about the exterior wall.
Well, it does say, what it talks about here is or from the center line when two buildings or units abut.
Okay.
So we're just talking about where there is what we would refer to as a party wall or a shared kind of wall. That
would be the common wall I'm referring to.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes. Not just a self-contained building, but like a townhouse or office building with suites and that sort of thing.
Why don't you just insert of a party wall after center line in your draft?
I think that might be an easy way to
part comment.
I think, yeah.
And so on page 2, it talks about...
I have a question. Should we... There's two different ways we could go through this. One would be as we go along, and other people have comments about that section, or do you want to go through all of yours and then the other?
On page 1, that makes sense. Do that.
Because I just, we've talked about this before, but to me, this still needs clarification as far as what, I mean, I know we're limited by what's in the master plan, but I just have questions about, there's some things that don't necessarily have walls, but it seems like they should count towards something. Like if you have a restaurant that has outdoor seating areas, but it doesn't have walls, but yet it's a part of the restaurant and they provide service there. Things like that, or towers, or outdoor theaters, or airports. Do you only count the small structure? You don't count all the other things that make up, I mean, it's making an impact on the environment.
Right, and those other items are controlled by measures such as impervious surface limits. So they do have controls on them. They have impacts, and those impacts are mitigated.
I just want to make sure that we're addressing things that may come up in the future. Like, for example, outdoor theater.
That would be probably an impervious surface, but not a building.
There's a lot of things that are going to slip between the cracks. I'm concerned about that, and that's in the master plan. There's not much we can do. But I just wanted to point that out, that there's some things that I thought about that seems like it ought to count towards something, but it's...
Well, but it does. It counts as impervious surface and has stormwater management requirements. And part of the design is if you leave a bunch of trees or leave a lot of area undisturbed, then you can thereby manage your stormwater runoff in that fashion.
And they may not have impervious surface.
No, it does, absolutely.
Well, like, I mean, some outdoor theaters might...
Amphitheater. Right.
So the village...
Right, so that space was probably called open space.
Yeah, that's a little different, but like, I think one thing that's going to come up the most will be restaurants that have outdoor seating. It could add up over time.
Well, again, there's an absolute minimum that the master plan specifies that has to be met in Shadow Park. It doesn't matter if 1 acre is developed or the entire Shadow Park is developed. So those spaces will, it may add up to some square footage, but there will be open space that has to be provided to meet the requirements.
But if you're doing if you're figuring out the size of a building, do you count the outdoor seating area if it doesn't have a wall?
No, you should. You wouldn't.
That's a problem that I'm going to know because that's how it's written, but I have a problem with it. On section 1, when you read the general purposes of the master open space plan additional elements, the purposes are to preserve open space, sensitive natural areas, and riparian corridors, protect and enhance wildlife habitat, and protect water quality, and then list the objectives. Number 2, 3, 4, and 5, I feel like there needs to be some additional language. Like, for example, to establish new open space areas as development occurs in close proximity to residences, offices, and retail sites. I feel like it needs to have something that says if it fits the criteria of the general purposes.
That is one of the general purposes.
I just wonder if it needs to be more spelled out.
Well, it's a general purpose, and there's 6 of them listed.
I just questioned if the purpose is listed, it really sounds more about preserving natural areas, protecting water quality, and yet some of these things don't necessarily sound like it's meeting those objectives. So let's add additional language. Like in some of them, it sounds like creating the neighborhood is more important than the original purposes. Does this bother anybody else? Or is it just
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
To reduce erosion and sedimentation, to me that should be done anyway, so why is that there?
Be happy to strike number 5 if that's the will of the board.
Well, I wouldn't want it stricken. I think that it may go better to the other category.
These are purposes for the open space element in the first place, and so these are what the open space element is intended to address, not resolve. That's later on.
It seems like it's setting priorities. That's how I look at it. It's setting priorities. And is the priority going to be to preserve, I mean, to me, like saying to to create, okay, some of these I see the value in them, but I just feel like it needs additional language.
Yes, Jeff, please do.
When we were in the middle of this process, when we started this process, and the purpose really related to those items 1 and 6. In the middle of the process, we were asked to add portions to the open space element that got into what 2 through 5 are addressing. And so if anything, we should broaden the general purpose by adding language there. But there were other opinions within this, going through all the people we heard, the Additional Elements Committee staff, that added these sorts of open space amenities like those that are located within neighborhoods and located outside of commercial areas and things like that. They were very specifically requested that we include those where we had not included those originally. So that's why we've got 2 through 5 in there now, and it seems to be. So I would say that we should be broadening the general purpose paragraph, not eliminating 2 through 5 or.
Well, I think the general purpose category, it sounds right. I mean, that was the intent when we required open space, was to protect. And some of these things, 2 through 5, some of them don't sound very protective.
Yeah, well, we've done other things for that deal with 1 and 6. We've also added 2 through 5 to make this broader. So that's I don't think we've reduced
I just wish
the
there was a way
emphasis
to
on 1 through 6.
number
We've
one.
just broadened what we've been asked to consider as open space, not only by this board but from the public.
I think just as the wording bothers me. I think it's number 1 and 6 are more of a priority. The others, to me, need to be, there's a way to weight those 2 things.
So perhaps 1 and 6 being ascribed to required open space and 2 through 5 being ascribed to additional open space.
All of these are required open space.
This just relates to all the open space, and particularly the required open space. These are just, they're not in, they don't have to be in any particular order, and we say that these are pursuing these objectives where appropriate. They wouldn't all be appropriate in every case.
If you think that numbering implies some sort of priority list, you could do bullets.
Sure. It's not intended to be a priority list.
I guess the part I'm struggling with, if it's talking about preserving natural areas, the buffers and the wildlife habitat, and then talking about, having a little square and a median in a highway, and that's the same way as, something on.
Well, again, it's not intended to be weighted. I mean,
I know,
it's.
but they're all carrying the same weight, and I'm saying that they're not the same weight. They shouldn't be the same weight. That the way it's presented, it all has equal weight.
Well, let's get rid of the numbering, as Mr. Messick suggested, and then it's just a list of things.
But my point is that number 1 and number 6 should be a priority. The other things, the median in the highway should not carry the same weight as land protected along the river, is my point.
Well, I understand, but they're all areas of open space. Open space is land that's not developed, basically.
Well, as you said, there's 2 forms of open space through this process, and one is the required open space, and one is the lowercase open space. And some of these things, to me, don't seem like they should fit under the criteria.
Well, I think actually we've got required open space or additional open space.
Those are the terms.
Right. And additional is not regulatory.
Right.
Required is. So we're trying to define what it is that is acceptable as required open space.
And I guess that's the part I'm struggling with. We can get into more of that later.
Yeah. If we did something like put a percentage of the required open space that is met with those items that fit 1 and 6. Because obviously our intent is not to go through here and say 1,300 acres of medians.
I don't think we can come up with that.
But it's a concern.
It's a concern as a matter of principle that I think, at least for 2 of us on the board, open space shouldn't be just whatever is developed.
Well, I understand.
whatever's left over. God's creation, whatever's left over, whatever doesn't get developed, that's open space. That's just...
It really is open space.
It is in your town ordinances, it is in other municipal ordinances, and we've listened to the public on this. Well, this isn't something that we just crafted out of our own desires.
I know exactly what you're meaning, Commissioner Foley. You want to prioritize it so you can say that the main thing in reference to open space, the main focus is wanting to say that, number one, to preserve open space including areas of unique and sensitive natural features. You want that to look at as a priority. And number 6 as a priority also. That outweighing the others. I think that's what, is that right?
Yeah.
So that's what, right. That's what you're trying to say. We want that to be the main reason why we want open space is because we want to have sensitive and natural features. We want that looked at.
So if we make this a priority order.
You want it to be a priority order.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
With number one where it is? Is that okay?
And number 6.
If we move number 6 up to number 2, is that okay?
Now, would we be able to relegate 2, 3, 4, and 5 to a second paragraph?
Well, what's wrong with just having the list? I don't.
Again, it puts it on par with.
We can say that we can establish it as a priority list.
Well, and even if we make it a priority list, I think Chuck was headed somewhere.
The percentages.
Yes, and so
Great idea. That would make me feel better.
I think that what you're referring to is these, like, E through, actually all of E is suburban open spaces and parks, plazas, that would be like paved areas.
I think these things are important. I'm not against them, but I just don't feel like that should be, I don't think that was the intent for me.
No, I think they have become urban spaces that we've talked about creating and encouraging them by giving them credit. And maybe what we do is we say all the items in E cannot be any more percentage of open space than X.
I mean, it's difficult to, do that without having everything planned and developed to know exactly what we're talking about. But there may be some percentage that we could say would not consist of items E, or that items E would not exceed more than X percent of the required open space, if that's what we're talking about.
Of the parkway, which is not a road parkway, but it's a green area.
It's a green space, yes.
Right? You've got medians.
Yes.
We said would be a minimum 30 and at least 100 feet long.
Yes.
You've got closes, you've got green belts, you've got mini parks. The biggest mini park is going to be 5 acres. I mean, so we're talking about 1,320 acres.
What if we said that E would not exceed 25% of the required open space?
I don't know that E would cover all of it.
Well, I think only these items are on open space.
E are these items like Commissioner Kyoto was just enumerating, the squares that say you have an office building with an open area in the middle of it.
Okay, that was the ones I was.
Those types of things.
How much of that?
Okay, that would make me feel a lot better.
All right, we will.
Have these important areas.
We hear you.
Drinking water.
We hear you.
No surprise there that I'm going to stand up for this.
Not a surprise at all. We hear you, and we're willing to make that commitment. Okay.
And I thought, since you threw out the number 25%, I thought 15% was more appropriate. That's 200 acres.
Well, I think so too. We're trying to be generous, but.
Does that include the bikeway?
anyway, that's my.
It could be we'd have less of these areas. I mean,
Exactly.
I thought one of the things was to encourage some of these
Well, we
areas.
can have more, we just don't get credit for it.
Correct.
I mean, we're not talking about what is open space, we're talking about what we will get credit for.
That's correct.
Because all these things are still open space.
And it's such a hard task because a lot of these things all make for a nice environment. You know, there's no question that all of the things that you listed here are help contribute to the good quality of life. And it's just hard to find that balance. But I appreciate the effort here to that.
Well, we've spent considerable time and considerable effort trying to listen to the concerns of not only this board, but as Chuck said, the committee, planning board, public hearings, workshops, and I personally think we have a pretty good element sitting here. And, you know, we're willing, standing here tonight, to make it even better as far as some of you are concerned. So.
And it sounds like most of it's going to be in the riparian buffer anyway. I'm good with that.
That meets the first priority of the list of priorities on page 1. So back to the percentage. How about 20%?
20.
Let's do 20%.
Let's do at least 80.
Yeah.
So a maximum 20% of the items under E that would go towards the required open space.
Right. There's a statement on page 2 that the planning director may allow required open space to be addressed on subsequent development plan.
Let me find that.
Seems to me where each development plan is a counting feature to it. I don't know that the planning director wants to be burdened with trying to remember to skip this one and add it to the next one. I don't know. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. It seems that the development plan is coming in and we talk about it.
I think we can
associated with it.
Yeah, we can just delete accept.
Okay.
The accept language there. I mean, we're going to be tracking it anyway. So if it will help make Jeff's task a little easier.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing. I think the way that the element is setting up and how practice is going to occur if we go forward with everything that we've done is that they'll take chunks of Chatham Park, and those chunks, much like the stormwater watersheds, will become open space areas and tree protection areas, unless things have changed in the latest tree protection element that I haven't gotten through yet. That's in practice how things were going to occur, is that this area of Chatham Park, not each individual site plan or 10-lot subdivision was going to, but the overall area would have to qualify for X percentage or whatever that calculation came out to be. And if, in staff's opinion, this one small site plan was going to be taken care of, the open space, it's going to be taken care of in another plan in that overall pod, then yes, then the town would know that. I would certainly pass that information along during the approval process, and that would be part of it. But I think striking it is fine, striking it from my ability to waive it, but just how, in practice, how that could occur is that one site might not have any open space, but the overall area could have the open space for it. Yeah.
Well, and I don't think open space has to be on the property. Okay.
Right.
Can be
Okay.
allocated elsewhere.
So-
But I think the development plan would talk about that allocation. where it
So
is.
I think taking it out of my authority and just putting it in there as the approval process, that we agree that that's in practice how that's going to occur. However they can craft that language, I think is good. But I wanted to make sure that everybody's on the same page of how we take pods of Chatham Park.
Yep.
And 20% of this pod is supposed to be open space based off the calculations that we have of density and looking at square footage of floor space. That's in practice how we're going to do it.
Yeah, and if we could add a new number 3 and change number 3 to 4, and the new number 3 would say, identify open space to be provided on a subsequent development plan. That kind of gets us into the ballpark of what Jeff's talking about, and how we're dealing with it, and how we're dealing with some of the tree coverage areas. So I would recommend or suggest that, or propose that we add that number 3 in there, so we can do what Jeff's talking about and be able to, plan it and do what Commissioner Kyoto just said, is open space might well be in a different location. Or, for example, we may have provided, and this would be in the previous category, but we may have provided 200 acres of open space over here that accounts for a number of different development plans as they come in. Right. So I'm going to propose that.
So the accounting tool is either going to say, this building has this amount of open space associated with it, and it's right here. Or it's going to say, this building has a certain amount of open space, and it was allocated over here.
Yeah.
And we're now taking out of that pot.
Right. We're taking out, there's going to be a bank of open space that will be allocated for this development.
So I'm thinking each development plan selects one of the methods to do the accounting.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think working as we have been doing in that process, we'll be able to work through it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just had a couple of things. I just want to clarify that.
What page are you on?
Same page.
1, or we're still on 2?
Page 2.
Okay.
And that's toward the end of the first paragraph where it talks about utility easements and associated facilities, blah, blah, blah. And I guess my question is, I know you have some of those big, tall power lines going across your property. So with the space, according to this, with the space underneath those giant power lines,
it could.
I have a problem with that.
Let's not.
I have a problem with that.
Well, if it's shown as required open space, it's going to be open space whether the easement remains or not.
I can't agree to that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels that some of our required
Utility
open space
easements
is
are not
going to
gonna
be
go
used
away.
as power line. No. We're talking about those big giant power lines, that would be some of our required open space.
Yeah, I'm okay with it because it's open space and people and animals traverse it.
Let's go play with the power line.
A lot of people do.
Well, open space and recreation areas aren't necessarily the same thing.
We could create a park out of the power line, put our park there. I can't believe you would say that's okay.
Well, there are greenways under those.
Yeah, greenways go under power lines.
These are, a lot of people don't even think they're safe to be under them. They have radiation involved. I'm
Again,
sorry, but that doesn't replace the forest, the beautiful forest. You can't replace it with the space under the large power lines.
It's just a different type of open space. It's still open
Okay,
space.
you can call it open space, but I don't think it should be part of the
not required.
required open space.
It shouldn't count till
No.
1320.
No.
Yeah.
Are those existing easements or would be new easements also?
Well,
Why define it?
well,
Why define
if
it
we
further?
set
I think we have a majority
a
who's weighing in on that.
if we set aside an area of open space and it's met the requirements and it's shown on a map and it's recorded and it's required open space and some utility comes along after the fact and, puts an easement through it, then I don't think we should have to subtract that out.
I'm talking about the existing, you've got some of this.
I'm trying to be clear. I'm trying to understand what we're talking about here. Because I'd like to be clear on it. So that's one example where we would not have had any. We don't have any control over where the power line easements are now, but we certainly don't with the future ones that come in and have to be established or condemned or what have you. I mean, those things happen. So it's one thing to say that no existing easement, no land in an existing easement can qualify as part of the required open space. I would like to make an exception for greenways, though, because those things, they need to go where they need to go to connect and to establish part of the greenway system.
And if we're talking about easements, I know we're making reference to the electrical lines, but a lot of our greenways are probably going to want to be in sewer easements.
Yes, and the power lines, I don't.
They're not. Those giant power lines are not attractive.
The power lines, fine.
And they're dangerous.
The easements are really more of a problem because there are going to be sewer easements. Yeah. Well, we're talking about everything.
I think it should be okay.
Overhead power lines are fine. We certainly we agree with
that.
Okay.
Okay. So one other question in that area. In the next paragraph down, number 3, indicate that a payment in loan is allowed by town ordinances will be made for any required open space and so on. Otherwise, in this document, it talks about that it must be approved by the board, and that language there is different. So I just wondered if we need to make that.
I can't find it right now. So
the second paragraph where there's 3 little I's, number 3.
Oh, okay. Yes, that was just. We made the change. We can certainly make it there. It'd be allowed by the town board.
I'm not in favor of payment in lieu, but if we do, then it should be a board decision. It needs to be consistent with the rest of it.
We changed it in the other place, and 20 years from now, the board might prefer to have payment in lieu. So
they might.
Yeah, I think we could explain that's not our intent, and we just foresaw circumstances where there may be some important piece of property on the lake or the river that you would like to be able to purchase, and you having payment in lieu opportunities would be something that you would consider in that situation. But we don't intend to be.
And I know that's true. My concern is that if 30 years from now you might be retired, laying on a beach somewhere, and I want to make sure the language.
Oh, boy.
I'll be laying on the ground somewhere.
We'll be under the beach.
Make sure the language would also apply to someone else who doesn't necessarily have a provision.
But if we did, the language will say that it can only happen if you approve.
Okay.
When you're still on the board on 30 years.
Everybody's sitting on the code.
All the crowd left. All the warm bodies left.
Somebody kept their needs,
Yeah.
I was sleeping good. I think.
So,
anybody else?
You might stay awake.
Well, I'm on page 2 still.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you about one edit.
Okay.
I think you went to strike some things out. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line from the bottom of the second paragraph. Struck the A. I don't think you intended to. An A subdivision plan.
Now it says a development plan.
Yeah, but it looks like the A is.
Yeah, you're right.
Here's my big one. And I wanted open space to have a minimum area minimum width, and I still want it to. And I see that there were efforts to address that with an average area or an average width, and I'm good with an average width. I appreciate an average width. The world isn't in square geometric shapes and forms, so I appreciate the average. So I still want minimum size for open space to be 1 acre. I want the average to be 50 feet wide, and I want that for a particular set of these open space items, and it's A through D. And so I've tried to edit your document by adding language. And under qualifying open space, the first paragraph, after thereof, I am writing it to say, quotes, or quote, except that for items A, B, C, and D to qualify as required open space, the area shall be a minimum of 1 acre in size, with an average width not less than 50 feet, with no width less than 25 feet, and with a maximum of 30% of the area less than 35 feet in width.
Just made your job harder, Jeff.
Yeah. I'm saying add after the thereof.
What was the last? I got the 25 feet. I didn't get the last
maximum of 30% of the area included in the average, no less than 35 feet in width. So that's to prevent a 1,000-foot long piece that's 1 foot wide with a lollipop at the end of it.
That would bring up the averages and all that.
So in my experience with averaging, you provide a minimum so that it doesn't go below that. So that will provide the acre and an average of 50 feet. No dimension wall shall be less than 25 feet, and no more than 30% of it is going to be less than 35 feet. And that's for A through D. I'm not touching the measurements in E, but I am touching E in that E10 I want to include in D. I want to change E10 to D5.
You sunk my battleship.
I think that was D4. Yeah.
On page 11, acre of Washington.
I want that to also have that acre in geometric requirements. And so related to that is an edit on page 6. Jumping around over here. It's okay. So page 6 is just the beginning of E. It says one or more examples of the following items 1 through 7.
That should be 1 through 9.
You're correct.
Okay.
And that's my big comment on this. I appreciate and recognize that many of my suggestions in our work session were included. I appreciate it.
Mr. Fiocco, do you believe that would minimize or eliminate situations where roadway, rights of way are designated as open space?
It would not, because the median is got its own metrics. So that's in the E section. And I we talked through that, and I'm okay with some of these medians being open space.
Because we've then limited those to
30 feet and
the percentage.
20%. But
the plazas and the mini parks.
Yeah.
I bet you could say medians would not be more than 1%. Right.
It'd be very small. Could I ask, did anyone have any issues with the proposed edits that we suggested, which is on the second page of the summary? They're just kind of mostly housekeeping things, but I'll be glad to.
You're explaining here what your edits are.
The edits are actually here. The proposed edits are actually written
Not
out.
been incorporated yet, or they have been
No,
incorporated?
no, they have not. These are our proposed edits to the previous draft. In other words, when we went back and reviewed the draft in preparing the summary, then these were things that occurred to us that needed to be revised.
This is additional revisions on top of the October 23rd.
October
18th, October 18th. Yes.
I'll need some time.
And those edits are in what we received?
They're here. They're on here. They're written down on here.
Yeah.
On the second page.
So we just received
I either need
Thursday
to
night?
take a 15-minute break and really study this quietly, or need some time.
You haven't drafted those edits in any...
No, because I didn't do that ahead of tonight's meeting, because I had...
Cross-reference to the document. Yeah, let's hold on.
Yeah, we're going to have so many changes. I don't think we're going to go through them.
I didn't even see this.
That's okay. I mean, it's...
Thought, but I thought it was just summarized what was already in here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the front page is.
1 through 15, starting on page 1, is the summary of what was revised. And then, as it says on page 2, the following revisions are proposed to the October 18 draft.
That's that point that
I
I didn't catch that, yeah.
That's okay. So, well, how do you want to see these edits then? I can do that. I can incorporate what we've discussed tonight and what I have on page 2 and send that out to you, or send it to Jeff and he can send it to you.
Great.
And then you can see it all in one place.
So you would have this document with yet another tracking color?
Well, do you...
Or would you accept?
I would just show the additional things we talked about tonight, so you wouldn't be looking at all these other edits that you looked at for tonight. Then it would be a lot less read and strike-throughs, and the simplest way for me to do it is to accept the changes, then do the new edits. Then the new edits will show up as edits to this document.
Okay, well then, if that's the case, I do have just 2 other items. And I don't think they were as major as what I just
Okay,
described.
What page?
So, page 4, or no, page 3, there's a discussion about stream crossings being allowed in open space. I don't.
Oh, right there, that's very end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll mark that.
So, being allowed means, I think, that it still counts as open space. And I can imagine some stream crossings being quite substantial and occupying a fair amount of area. And I'm thinking if we're designing a roadway system, that we
we just wouldn't count it as part of the open space when we're running it through open space. I think we should swap that, just, you know,
That's key.
sidewalk, curb to curb, whatever that piece is, that 50 room from outside edge to outside edge. That would catch it. The only other thing I want to deal with is on page 4, item 3. Item 2 talks about these areas being depicted or shown on the small area plans, and that is absent from item 3, and I think it'd be important for item 3 to also be shown on the small area plans.
Well, you're on page 5, under D.
No, I'm on 4. D3.
Oh, Jordan Lake Nature Area?
Yep.
Add shown on the small area plan?
Yeah, I think the way it reads to me is after the word lake and before and, says it will be depicted on small area plans.
Okay. I got you, because it's, the other two did reference that.
Yeah, I see.
The whole area D on page 5. I understand what this means to also be D.
Well, see, D
It isn't very clear to me what this is.
D is getting amended by that.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, D has the big new proviso on it,
Right.
minimum size
Okay.
to qualify.
So those qualifiers within D will be removed.
Yeah, it'll be subject to the big qualifier that we discussed.
Streetscape buffers, I wasn't clear about, like, what does that include exactly?
Streetscape buffer, that's a minimum of 50 feet wide, average, and an acre. A big piece of land.
That'd be a pretty good size streetscape buffer.
Got it.
That's all I have.
I just have questions about E, under about private playgrounds. I just want to be clear that if it's in a gated community that's not open to the public, that it should not count.
Which number under E?
Over on page 6, E, playground, private playground.
Yeah, this isn't a gated reference, it's the fact that this would be a playground the town would not own and Chatham Park would own. So we don't get park credit for it, we get open space credit for it.
So it doesn't, so that your required open space does not go toward this private park, is that what you're saying?
Well, all of E cannot exceed, anything in E cannot exceed.
Can't exceed, we agreed it wouldn't exceed 20% of the total.
But I still just wanted to clarify that in a community that's not open to the public, that it shouldn't be, okay.
We're saying all items in E
Yeah.
cumulatively cannot exceed.
Correct.
Right.
I just have a problem with, and again, this is probably covered by what you're saying, but I was having trouble with parking spaces being counted as open space. On the street parking spaces, on page 7D. Under on-street parking spaces along the perimeter of plaza, abutting the public or private street is counted as open space. That's like town parking, it should not be open space. Can we strike that one?
Which one again? I'm sorry. I
Okay,
didn't-
so page 7 under plaza,
Which one?
D, where it says
D.
Parking spaces along the plaza would count as open space. It says may include a limited number of on-street parking spaces along the perimeter of the plaza.
is language that was given to us, so.
Okay, can we strike that?
Okay, we'll strike D.
Not covered by what you talked about. I struggle with the media thing, but I'll try to keep an open mind with your addition to make sure I'm okay with it.
You'll come to love them.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna start
I
getting
believe you guys. I'm just more worried about somebody.
More, you know.
I trust you guys. I just worry about somebody 20 or 30 years. If it's not you, somebody else will say, "Oh, we're just gonna."
Probably won't be any of us that are doing this.
That's why I want to make sure, it's not just word of mouth, not you just saying.
I think you've got us nailed down pretty good.
Okay, let me just say about that though, because I understand your point. The reason we chose 30 feet is that goes beyond a normal median, but just because of the width of lanes and things like that, does not go to 30 feet. 30 feet is when you're really doing something exceptionally wide.
Like, I'm just curious, what would you do? Because, I don't know, if I had children, I wouldn't let them, I'd be too worried about them going in the street, even if it's 30 feet.
Well, a lot of this is, again, that's starting to get, you're saying it should be something you can play in to be valuable.
Yeah.
A lot of this open space is not trying to be played in. I mean, driving by it when you're going home is of value because of having that open space near you. So, I mean, that's more the intent of what's, when we're doing something like that. It's not it's not for your kids to go play in the
forest.
But we're going to have that too.
I'm okay with his addition to make that okay. So tennis court, swimming pool, basketball courts, is that on? Everyone's okay with that?
No.
That's all I have. I wasn't the appendix. It's just for reference. Okay, I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's our plan here? It's quarter to 11, and we have a closed session So we're going to have continued work and amendments from open space. So, shall we proceed to manager's update and go into closed session? Ron, good night. Johnny?
I don't think you need to apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. TV fell asleep. I'll be as brief as I can. The few items that we have going on right now, the Hearn Road water main project, the proposals are due for that by December 8th. You'll recall that's about 1,500 foot of iron pipe with a couple of hydrants and some new, some service connections that will be attached to that. We should have the contract before the town board in January, I believe. So work's going to continue on that. Impact fees, I circled back on that, fine-tuned a little bit of the wording on that RFQ to make sure that we're square as far as a legal perspective. Where that is going out tomorrow, we should be looking at that on December. Answers to that proposal coming back on December 11th. With the decision made probably that first meeting in January, so we can get started and get that completed by July. You'll recall Mayor Perry leading an effort to install a bench, and you can see the depiction there graphically represented as far as where the bench is going to go, based on my understanding, in front of the State Employees Credit Union. Those concrete pad installations will be put in by staff this week, and it's my understanding that the SECU branch will be putting up the bench after we install the pads. I don't have as much to report on the kiosks. We've tried to circle back with our contact there, and apparently John had one meeting with him, tried to set something else up, hasn't been able to hear back from him. So hopefully we'll know something more about that by the next meeting. North side water system improvements. The testing continues on the water line. Apparently there was some, they're working through some back key issues on that new water line. So they're going to make sure that that's squared away. The welds on the water tower have been tested and approved. We're expecting painting to happen any time now. With some dry weather, but of course it's kind of that aspect of that might be a little bit unpredictable at this time of year. But
Just back on the water tower, I've not even been able to lay eyes on the thing. I've been so busy. I keep meaning to take the bypass, but I wanted to ask: is lighting installed on it yet? The FAA required?
Yeah, I don't believe so.
I don't think it doesn't need it.
It doesn't need it.
It's 113 feet tall and
good.
113.
Yeah, but 180 where
or 200.
Okay, thank you. Never mind.
Yeah, if you want to go out and check it out, you can actually see it as you're crossing. As you're crossing the overpass there over the bypass, you can kind of look your left.
But I'm trying to stay focused on traffic.
Understand.
So can we climb it? That's the question.
I'm told there are going to be two harnesses, one possibly big enough for me. So I'll let you know when that happens. Andrew told me. What?
I'm going to.
There's going to be a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I'll take a photograph.
So the only other thing I think that I'd want to really quick remind you guys that I think it was mentioned earlier, the tree lighting ceremony. The Christmas parade is, as you're aware, on December 10, I believe, on Sunday. You don't have to make a decision right now tonight, but you might want to think and connoiter amongst yourselves on how you want to march, whether you want to march with vehicles, you want to walk, you want to float and walk, how you want to do that, because then we'll help kind of make that happen. And I know you guys, I've seen boards do 100 different things in the 5 years that I've been here. So however long you want to, or however you want to do that, just let us know with a little bit of advance work, so we can put in a little advance work with it. So. And then tomorrow morning I'll be at the Chatham EDC, just kind of giving a quick update on town events. So I don't remember, are you going?
What again was the time for tree lighting?
What is the time? I don't know.
Time for tree lighting?
Tree lighting? The event's scheduled from 4 till around a little after 6. I think they're lighting the tree at 5:45. But they'll start setting up around 2. I think we have to start shutting down the street about 2:30ish.
You're shutting down the street at 2:30?
Yeah, because they're setting up vendors and a stage.
I remember how nerve-wracking it was year before last for y'all to shut that down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a task. I probably have to have about 15 to 18 officers.
So what time you said actual tree lighting is?
Ma'am?
What time is the actual tree lighting?
The tree lighting, I think, I've got to be out of state this weekend. Shorty's been spearheading. I think he told me they were lighting the tree at 5:45.
Yeah, I was asked to be here at 5:30. To introduce Santa. I'm supposed to introduce Santa at 5:30.
Okay.
Of course, our upcoming meetings, and we've added, it looks like we've added, not reflected on this, but we've added a couple of things to the December 11th meeting schedule as well. So with that, I would tap out for any comments, questions, or concerns that you guys might have this evening.
Not really. I just want to let Mr. Bruce Beck know that I'm going to be pushing real hard for this utility engineer. So with all these site plans and everything coming up, we did discuss that for the first of the year, correct?
If we can afford it.
Okay. Good enough.
Two holly trees seem to be struggling to be lit.
Yeah, noticed that Saturday night. Asked John to take a look at it. I haven't heard how that happened. We have one of those struggling to be lit or is lit during the day, so I think something has flipped. So.
That happened to me today. The alarm went off tonight.
Yeah. So that's kind of bugging me a little bit. We'll get that squared away. Kind of a learning process with those timers, I think. So.
I think what may be happening is, I meant to talk to John about it, is somebody's unplugging the timers for first Sunday to use the plugs, and it's those timers, and then they plug it back in when they're done, which sets it 12 hours off cycle. So I think people are conveniently using the outlets during first Sunday. They're available to them, and they're not realizing they're messing up our plan. I'll mention it to them tomorrow.
I was visiting the rain gardens recently installed to look at the plants, saw that the plants were planted, but I'm noticing that some of the parking spaces there are bird baths. So I think we've got some pavement failures going on. No, it isn't. So we can look at them. Doesn't look like compaction happened well enough to get the pavement to hold up underneath the load of the car. So there's probably 5, 6 of them. And the other thing, I know I sent everyone an email about town messaging, and I'd like for us to really look into how we can maybe adopt the email blast technique the county has, or just look at other ways that we can disseminate information to the public that the work that the town is doing on behalf of the citizens.
I agree.
Can I use their information department?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the contract with the public relations firm? Year and a half ago?
We still have a contract with the public relations firm, but we use those for media, for monitoring the media mainly, and we were at the time looking to develop a sort of a clearinghouse for the additional elements piece that didn't really get any traction. We didn't see as much value in that as time went on, and we didn't really need as much emergency messaging as time went on. So we're kind of scaling back the need for them. We're still probably going to have a relationship with them in some way, shape, or form, just in order to kind of help manage possible emergency messaging in the future. Maybe even tackle some of these things that we talked about a little bit. But the original purpose that we secured them isn't really that same purpose anymore.
like to thank Percy for, they handled the Northwood lockdown today in a very professional way. It gave a, if there's any bright spots we have with respect to that, it's that they learned a lot in going out and locking that school down. And although it wasn't the emergency that everybody thought it was, I gather, a very valuable lesson. I spoke to Officer Delaney, and she thought that it was very, very valuable. So, and we're just awfully glad that it wasn't what people thought it was.
Luckily, it wasn't what they thought it was, and hopefully we never need it, but I think it'll help us better prepare the school staff, all the law enforcement agencies involved in case something like that does happen. Because it was an unintended drill.
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally, we couldn't have planned to do a drill better than that.
That's what Mike did. Chief, what was it? Was it someone out there?
We're pretty sure it was somebody out there hunting. Gun deer season actually opened Saturday, and since this would have been the first school day that hunting season, with guns was open, but there was never none of the information after everything calmed down, and what information my officers gathered, the sheriff's office staff gathered, best of my knowledge, is it wasn't actually on the campus. It was the property adjacent to it.
So Chief Crutchfield, actually, and Mayor, this did stimulate a recollection of the one concern that I had brought outside of my notes, but I've been asked by a constituent about a return to bow hunting or a bow hunting period, and I'm wondering, were you on duty at the time when historically we had a bow hunting period in town?
Pittsburgh currently participates in the urban hunting program. We're back on it. We just we weren't on it last year because of literally a clerical error, probably on my part.
Okay.
We got the information, apparently didn't turn it back in, but Pittsburgh ordinance allows it, and we're listed in the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Manual as a bow hunting.
So it's really just lack of market demand that the bow hunters are not knocking on our doors?
A lot of them think that it's a special season. It's not during the regular hunting season. And a lot of them think that they can just come here and bow hunt. When they actually come talk to us, they think that we've established property for them to bow hunt, and we have to tell them, no, we're not going to allow you to hunt at our town lake park or on any town property. You have to have a private property owner that allows you to hunt on the property.
So they would still need to work with Shadow Park or whomever.
They can't. They have to have the permission of the landowner, and I think it's been made very clear to me that Chatham Park's not going to allow hunting on their property. So
is that right? Is that right?
So
you won't be allowing hunting?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they. Well, if they get annexed in the city limits, there won't be hunting in there.
No annexed areas are allowed.
Yeah, no annexed areas, because only the urban archery and provisions in our town ordinance allow the dispatch of nuisance animals, but there's no hunting in city limits other than the urban archery season.
Well, so what's the metric for a nuisance animal? And a lot of folks think any deer inhibit their gardening activities, but this particular constituent wrote saying, whatever happened to it, I experienced such relief during the period after the last bow hunting. He thought that it only happened once. For 3 years he saw relief, and it's something that we allow and encourage on our family land in Silk Cove. And so I thought I should bring it up and just inquire. But it's interesting to hear that Shadow Park is not going to allow that. Would you consider allowing it pre-development to allow some depredation on reduced populations so that there wouldn't be this flight with development?
We don't allow any hunting, period, because we can't control it. We've had people in the past say, oh, Tim told me I could hunt, or Bubba told me I could hunt. And so we just say no, so wildlife people, sheriffs, police know that they see anybody on our property hunting, trespassing. So I wish it was simple, but we can't control it. We got so many acres, we just can't control it.
All right. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by Michael Fiocco. We'll go into closed session for right now, and
He had dropped off a packet of information for me last week and said, really like to be on the agenda. I said, well,